everybody. This is the MLB Deeper Dive presented by the one, by the only. Let me double check. Oh, see, I knew that this was going to get in my head because I knew. We've been talking Monkey Knife Fight all day. Monkey Knife Fight, Greg and I did a 30-minute show for earlier today, and that is who is the presenter of today's Deeper Dive. Definitely check out all of their prop-based goodies. We'll get to talking about them a little bit later here, but first, I got to introduce the man, the legend, Adam Scherer, Ship My Money DFS. How you doing, my dude?
Doing pretty good. Excited for more baseball. It's the early slate didn't go particularly well, so excited to move on to another one.
I saw the pitching on that slate, and I unclicked everything and just closed the tabs. Was that a good idea?
I still played cash, but I had max entered the $18 or whatever it was on DraftKings, and then I started looking at the slate and just manually withdrew everything. I didn't even want to. I didn't even want to bug the DraftKings rep about it. I was just like, I got myself into this. I'll get myself out. And spent 10 minutes just manually taking all my lineups out.
So this is actually a fun talking point to start off the show as everybody's rolling on in right now. How do you prefer to unreg? Because I always do I think the phone is the quickest way. Just kind of click. Sure. Oh, and being able to go back and through. I had a buddy who tried to convince me one time the best way to unreg is the iPad, because you can do it and you can keep your thumb in the same spot and unreg it. But I've always found the phone to be by far the most efficient method.
Yeah, I haven't tried it on iPad, but phone definitely better than desktop.
Yeah, and FanDuel is actually the GOAT of the unregistered because you can just click the X buttons going down the line. Much appreciated.
Yeah, FanDuel's good for unregistering. It's good for late swapping, and it sucks for everything else.
I didn't know where you were going to go with that, but I'm glad that was the extent of it. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell as you're coming on in. We're presented today by Monkey Knife Fight. They're a very, very fun platform to be playing on. I've been playing a bunch over there here of late since we started up with them. And I got to say, I'm very impressed by how easy everything is on the interface, how easy the gameplay is. Their player props-based contests are fantastic for NBA, UFC, PGA, esports, soccer, even if you've been grinding some Euro stuff. Monkey Knife Fight literally has every sport that's available there. Check it out at monkeyknifefight.com. Choose which game you want to play, your contest type, and your buy-in. And even better, Monkey Knife Fight has an instant first match deposit bonus of up to $100. That is $100 free that gets put into your account instantly by using the promo code Awesemo. So definitely be checking that out. A couple of the ones that Greg and I were looking at earlier today, Home Run Derby was a fantastic spot. We've got Shohei Ohtani, who will definitely be a talking point of just about everything that I'm talking about. We can't play him as a batter over on DraftKings or FanDuel, so why not go to Monkey Knife Fight and just continue this ridiculous home run streak? If you believe in streaks, this is definitely a good time to be investing in Shohei. Combining him with guys like Fernando Tatis, should that game be good to go? I haven't looked at the weather here of late, but other home run hitters around the entire league. There are so many great spots to be utilizing it. You can play that. You can play the fantasy challenge. Also, we have the new MLB props tool for MLB. We can be doing the strikeout props as well. A fantastic game to target. The Houston and Baltimore game. Make sure you are on the under of 3.5 strikeouts for Matt Harvey because he is complete garbaggio. But with that said, that's Monkey Knife Fight. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. Adam, you ready to get to it today, my dude?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's rock. All right. First one that I've got on the board here, right off the bat, Angels and Yankees. Let's get my hot take out of the way here right now. I am not just, I wouldn't say appalled is the word, but I am truly absolutely floored and shocked by Shohei Ohtani's ownership on both sides, really. On DraftKings right now, Shohei Ohtani 15.8% to be a top two pitcher, coming in around 11% ownership. On FanDuel in the last run, 6.9% chance of being a top pitcher. That's sixth on the board, but only 1.5% ownership because he's sitting at that weird 9,500 price range. And I'm telling you right now, this will be the most over the field I've been on a pitcher compared to their ownership all season long. Are you with me?
Yeah, his ownership went up a little bit on DraftKings since whenever the last time you refreshed was. But
okay.
Yeah, still, I mean, projected for 17% on DraftKings, only about 3% on FanDuel. So really can get a lot of leverage on him on FanDuel. Still like him on DraftKings too. It just seems like, I don't really know why, but I've seen him just underprojected, or I think underprojected some other places. And to me, this looks like a pretty good spot for him, especially when you're talking tournaments and just talking about upside. You know, obviously if he gets blown up by the Yankees, it happens. You know, you don't win a tournament that day. That's going to be most days. But I think when you talk about like getting a ceiling game from Ohtani, you're looking for right-handed heavy lineups to strike out a lot, and that's what the Yankees are giving you. They also are resting Aaron Judge. They're resting Gio Urshela. So you're getting Rougned Odor in the lineup. You're getting Clint Frazier in the lineup. Odor, obviously not a righty, but he'll still strike out plenty from the left side. Clint Frazier from the right side. A lot of right-handed bats in this lineup. A lot of strikeouts in this lineup. And Shohei Ohtani this season against right-handed hitters, 42.6% strikeout percentage. He's only allowed a .077 expected ISO, 238 WOBA, 17.5% swinging strike percentage. He's been good against lefties, but any issues he's had power-wise have basically been against lefties. There's only the two in this lineup, and they're not very good. I think this looks like a really, really good spot in terms of upside for Ohtani.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like, oh, he should be the first pitcher in for your cash games, but I got to tell you, even for that, I would have him under consideration at least. 0.92 whip against righties this season. You have 7 righties, and as you said, the 2 lefties that we are getting in the lineup are complete garbaggio. I mean, you've got Rougned Odor's got a 25% plus K rate on his side of it. Brett Gardner right around 24.4%. There it is. I mean, I just don't see a way around it. The ceiling is way higher than what I think everybody is kind of projecting him for around the industry today. So I'm glad that you're on board with that too, because I felt very uncomfortable with how much I was going to have coming into today. But I think that it's a little bit justified, especially because the ownership's down. But Domingo Germán on the other side, 21.6% K percentage on the season. Nothing super flashy here. I'd have a little bit of interest in Angels bats if I could play Ohtani, but apparently I can't today. What are you going to be doing with Germán?
Not looking to Germán here, really, but also not looking to the Angels bats much for the reason that you mentioned. The Angels are a team that they don't have a lot of very good hitters, and so when you stack them, you're typically going to want Ohtani, Walsh, Rendon, and then whatever fills in around them. But taking, Ohtani not being available, you're getting a watered-down Angels stack by just you don't have a choice. And then on top of that, he's probably going to be batting second, so you're missing the best hitter and the guy in the middle of the lineup, so it's just going to kind of screw the stacks up in that way as well. There's a lot of really good hitting spots on this slate. I'm not really interested in the Angels because I can't use Ohtani as a hitter.
And Ohtani, we know that he can have a walk problem from time to time. We had 12.5% walk percentage on the season. It's just not a very patient Yankees lineup for the most part. As I'm going through the numbers, I don't see an issue. I would have a couple interests, especially because I'm going to be very, very heavy on Ohtani. And sometimes when you say things like that, you still on the other side have to have a little bit of interest in maybe the other side in the event that he is walking dudes. That pitch count gets up there. But Ohtani threw 105 pitches against the Giants. That further bolsters my case where I just think he could go deep into this game. There are Ks available here, but sure, on the other token, maybe these top end Yankees with DJ LeMahieu, Gary Sanchez, Stanton, they can still hit the ball really, really hard.
Yeah, there's still upside with the Yankees because of how much power they have, even without Judge and Urshela in the lineup. But again, there's a lot of really weak pitching on the slate. There's a lot of good spots that you can go to. So, looking at the top stack tool, the Yankees are projected to be under-owned. We have them with a 5.5% chance of being the top stack, only about 2.2% aggregate ownership. So certainly a team that makes some sense in larger field tournaments, but I don't think they would make the cut for me even in like 3 max. I think you can look to some of these other really, really high upside offenses that are getting a little bit more ownership than the Yankees, but that there's just enough of them on this slate that ownership's still going to be spread out at least somewhat. And so that's going to push the Yankees down the list for me a little bit because I have so much respect for Ohtani.
Is there any hitter from the Angels that you could put on as like a one-off? I don't even see Jared Walsh is somebody I would have been playing like here and there, but I just don't see any interest I have in the Angels side whatsoever.
Yeah, there's nobody that really stands out. I was going to say Walsh or Rendon would obviously be the first two, but in the context of the entire slate, neither one really looks that great to me.
Did Luis Urias have another stupid price on DraftKings today?
He was like 5,500 and he hit 2 home runs.
I know. That's what I was just about to throw out there. I tell you what, unregistering was the best decision you've made all day, without a doubt. But you still played cash. I'm guessing he didn't make it in at 5,500.
He did not. No, just missed the cut.
Okay.
By $3,000.
So good. Miami Marlins, Philadelphia Phillies next up on the board, 8.5 total runs. Philly, massive favorites because you have one Aaron Nola on the mound on one side. God, he's very, very good at pitching. I mean, I'm still a Zach Wheeler truther, but I mean, Aaron Nola has been repeatably good here now for a while. He made the jump last year. He has continued that jump upwards here, 28.3% K percentage on the year. I'll say expected slugging 408. That's not elite by any means, but 37.4% hard hit percentage here, going up against just this inept Miami Marlins offense. WRC plus around 80, I believe, against righties. I will double check that, but my God, definitely a fantastic spot for Nola today.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's been very good against both sides of the plate in terms of strikeouts, 28.4% to righties, 28.3 to lefties. He has the fourth highest strikeout percentage overall on this slate. He's got the second highest strikeout minus walk percentage behind Joe Musgrove. And then when you look at the Miami lineup, the only thing, if you look at Nola's numbers, that he has had some issues with this year, he has given up power to left-handed hitters in particular, 222 ISO to lefties. So if you're looking for left-handed power on Miami, you have Chisholm leading off that has a decent shot. And outside of that, Jesus Sanchez, Joe Panic, Sam Leon hitting 6, 7, 8, not really going to concern you too much when you talk about Aaron Nola. So I think he's, deservedly getting a lot of ownership. I think the price is reasonable at 10-2 on DraftKings, 11K, I believe, on FanDuel. All of that's great. No issues with Nola outside of, kind of the same thing that we talked about yesterday with Woodruff at the top. Not that you have to get away from him or anything like that, but there is certainly merit. Like, pitching typically isn't going to win you a tournament. It's more bad, being on the bats that get there. So when you do get a really popular pitcher at a relatively expensive price tag, there is always some merit to just saying, like, okay, I'll take my chances on other guys. Hopefully he scores like 20 points and I can beat him with mid-range guys and really have an advantage. But again, there's normally ways that you can there's other ways you can go where, you can just put Nola in and find other ways to be different. I think Nola looks great. Definitely someone you should be looking to in cash, and a very good tournament play as well.
I just kind of assumed with Jordan Holloway at 4,400 that I was going to remove him from my pool because I expected him to be a reliever or somebody that I just didn't have any interest in whatsoever. But he is 4,400. And I will say his pitch counts have been higher than I would expect out of a guy who's 4,400. Also sporting a 2.55 ERA, only 14 Ks on the entire season, and his appearances mostly out of the pen here early on. But he got up to 74 pitches against the Dodgers on the 15th of May. It's been a long, long time for him since he saw any action whatsoever. But he was coming off of the injured list. I mean, I don't know what it was supposed to be, like what his pitch count number would be by any means. But I mean, having 1 or 2% of this dude in my 150 doesn't seem stupid at 4,400. Am I just crazy with that?
No, I mean, I don't think so. He went 5 2/3 on June 22nd at AAA. And prior to that, he was at 4 1/3. Racked up some strikeouts in those games as well. So I don't have the pitch count total, but he had 4 strikeouts in 5 2/3 plus 2 walks. The start before that, he had 7 strikeouts and 1 walk in 4 1/3. So it seems like he probably threw a decent number of pitches. I think if he's pitching well, you could certainly see 70 to 80 pitches here would be my guess. I'm not sure, really how necessary paying down to 4,400 will be on this slate, but it's certainly, I think, viable just because, again, you just get different builds by doing that. It's kind of like we talked about McGill yesterday. I didn't really think, just talking through the slate, that it was that necessary. But once I made lineups, he got into a lot of them just because he was so cheap. It got me a lot of upside as far as hitters go. If that happens here with Holloway, I'll be fine with it because I think he is stretched out enough that he's worth a dice roll at 4,400. But at the same time, it is a tough ballpark to pitch in. It is a Philadelphia lineup that has plenty of dangerous hitters in it. No Rhys Hoskins today is beneficial as far as you take out a power bat. You also take out a guy that strikes out a lot. But a little bit watered down Philadelphia lineup as well.
It looks pretty darn gross, not going to lie. I mean, Odubel Herrera leading off, that's always nifty. Good times up there. Whenever you can get a guy who has an xWOBA of 284 and put him in the leadoff spot, you just got to do it. I mean, what in the hell? I mean, I don't understand what managers are doing nowadays, but again, that's why I'm here and that's why they're there. But at the same time, there's money to be made by analyzing such things. Looking at the Marlins lineup, I have zero desire to be playing anybody against Nola. Are you on board with that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then Philadelphia Phillies, if you had to be picking a couple guys in the event that this dude, I still think this Holloway guy, I mean, it really comes down to pitch count for me because I think he's a decent enough pitcher. Only a 293 expected slugging on the entire season here I just clicked on his batting stats. Nicely done. 277 expected slugging. I mean, that's a low number to be looking at there. Not giving up a ton of power here, but same dudes like Bryce Harper, Alec Boehm. I really don't have stacking interest here.
I mean, I have a little bit just because I think the ballpark's favorable. The guys at the top, Herrera and Segura, are cheap. I think Real Muto is underpriced for a catcher batting third here. So I do have some stacking interest just because I think the Phillies are pretty inexpensive. You can get some, I think, pretty high upside lineups by looking at them. It does look like they'll go a little bit over own though, probably because of the pricing. So, Real Muto, Harper, the two that really stand out. But the cheap guys at the top, I think, do make mini stacks or full stacks even pretty high upside plays.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the top stacks tool now. I think The way I meant is that I don't have as much interest because they're over-owned here at the
Sure.
moment. 8% ownership share, 5% chance of being a top stack. A little bit more of just, I think people might be looking at a guy who's 4,400 and pitching there and saying, I'm going to stack against him without looking at some of his underlying stats that look a little bit more solid than the average sub 5K pitcher, I would say. And hopefully he can get there a little bit. And hopefully that one lineup just jams in all the expensive bats. I mean, yesterday, McGill, it was great to have a bunch of him so I could jam in nothing out of the Astros. That was a real fun slate. I enjoyed it. Anything else to talk about here?
No, I think that covers it for this game.
All right. Seattle 10.5, going into Toronto minus 235. Yeah, I have Toronto interest. I think everybody and their dog has Toronto interest on this side. As we're looking at this game, they're still playing in that AAA ballpark. Justice Sheffield, the acquired Justice Sheffield from the New York Yankees once upon a time, good times, is just been abysmal. 523 expected slugging, near 92 mile per hour exit velocity on the season, 42.7% hard hit percentage. I could go on and on, but it's a lefty against a bunch of really good righties. And why wouldn't you want Toronto today?
Yeah, there's nothing negative at all for me to say about Toronto. 6.5 implied run total. Justice Sheffield not striking out hitters, giving up plenty of power. And again, when you talk about the Blue Jays, you're talking specifically about right-handed power. 220 ISO allowed to righties this year. His expected ISO is a little bit higher. And then, so it's going to set up for guys like Semien, Bichette, Guerrero, Hernandez, Springer, Grichuk, Gurriel, just so much right-handed power in this lineup. The guys at the top, Semien, Bichette, and Guerrero specifically, are very expensive, but that's kind of mitigated by mid 4K price tags on Springer and Grichuk, Hernandez at 4,900, and then Gurriel at 3,700. It kind of lowers the average cost of the stack. And there's not a ton of really expensive pitching today. Like Nola is, expensive, but he's not 11K or 11.5. It's going to be easy enough, I think, to get to him and still get to some of these Blue Jays bats. So we have Toronto as the top stack in terms of top stack percentage. We have them being a little bit under-owned as well. They're certainly getting ownership, but as I had mentioned earlier when we talked about the Yankees, because there are several teams in very good spots today, I think that it's going to lower ownership enough that we'll be able to get exposure to a few of these top teams and not really have to worry about their ownership too much.
Definitely agreed. I just loved getting here, and I don't think that that's a shock to anybody. Looking at the top stacks, to a 12.7% chance of being a top stack, 9.8% ownership share. If you're going to give me leverage on this Toronto Blue Jays team with a better implied team total than what you've got with San Diego, which again, I'm very surprised to see. As you said, I think it's a result of some of the pricing. It's some of these guys that might just be a little bit more difficult to get up to. But on the other side of that, on the other side of the bump here, we've got Steven Matz. It's a big price tag to be paying for Steven Matz. Has he been worth it this season, though? I mean, this is kind of an interesting spot where he definitely grades out a lot better than I expected him to at a 378 expected slugging. And the walk rate has been pretty fantastic, 7% walk rate, low exit velocity on the ball, 39.3% hard hit percentage. Like, grades out a lot better than I would expect him to. And this is definitely an upgrade of a matchup, but I still can't get there at this tag.
My biggest concern is that I expect him to be limited. There was a report yesterday that he threw a 60-pitch bullpen session, but that the Blue Jays are going to have him on a pitch count today. It doesn't say what the pitch count is, but my guess is that you're talking somewhere around like 80 pitches or something like that. He's expensive enough here at 8,100 where you're kind of walking a pretty thin line trying to get enough strikeouts from a guy on a pitch limit to give you a start that you're really happy with at 8,100 and still get deep enough into the game to really help you out. And then the deciding factor there, like I could see rolling the dice if he's not projected for a lot of ownership, but right now he's projected for 19% ownership on DraftKings. And I think it makes sense. The matchup against the Mariners is a good one. But to me, when you're talking about someone that's expected to be on a pitch count like that, you're not getting a huge reward if he does give you that very efficient, 7 strikeout, 6 inning on 82 pitch game. You're not really getting that big of a reward because 1/5 of the field still has him, and you're just putting yourself in, kind of behind the 8 ball if you don't get a perfect start from him, basically at 20% owned. So to me, there's some other guys I would rather take shots on. I would rather for sure find $600 for Ohtani, for example.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, that's kind of what my entire day is going to hinge on. I will say in the top pitcher still, I mean, he's got the second highest chance of being a top 2% pitcher on this slate. Even at 80 pitches, I will say the one plus that I think goes for him is that he was on the COVID-19 list. It wasn't like an arm injury or like a physical injury per se. So maybe he can just immediately see that pitch count get up there again here. But yeah, if he's going to be on any kind of an underlying pitch count, that definitely limits the ceiling. You're basically playing him with the hopes that he can rack up a ton of Ks against this piss poor Seattle team right out of the gate. 27.7% K percentage against lefties this season. It's tied for third best in the entire league. So it's a great matchup, only an 87 WRC plus, and there's enough ISO there. So 162 ISO, you do have some righties in that lineup that on the other side, I mean, you don't want to probably be picking on Steven Matz too much, but it's a tiny ballpark. Maybe some one-off interest in like a Haniger here.
Yeah, I do have some interest in the middle of the Seattle lineup, really. Haniger, of course, the one that really stands out, but Ty France has some power. Torrens is a cheap catcher option, has some power. Tommy Murphy has another cheap catcher option a little bit further down the lineup, also has power. So I could see either, one-offing right-handed power or even mini stacking something with like Haniger, France, and Torrens, something like that, because not only do they have power, and we know Mats will give up some home runs, but if we are getting around 20% ownership on Mats, there's some leverage to be had there as well by taking power hitters against them.
And then the Toronto Blue Jays, this is like a Yankee situation from yesterday, just like play all the dudes because they're all right-handed and they're all going to murder Justice Sheffield.
Yeah, play them all. Don't know who's in the lineup yet, but whoever it is.
Yeah. I mean, whoever is in the lineup, as long as it's not that Espinal individual who I just refuse to play at any point in time. Slappy McSlapperson. I just don't really like playing that dude whatsoever. So avoid him perhaps. But something you should not avoid is the Awesemo Plus tools and content that we have for nearly every DFS sport out there. With a weekly pass for $29.95. That is like the deal of the industry for sure, because it includes full access to all of our premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and even more. And if you're a user of Awesemo Plus Platinum, you can take advantage of the promo code we have now, which is MLB Deeper Dive, all caps, one word. That's MLB Deeper Dive, as you can see on the screen there, for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, if you're only looking to play MLB DFS, then you can sign up with the MLB weekly package for only $15.95. So stop guessing, start winning. And if you want to check out what's behind the paywall today, we've got a couple free tools available to you. The MLB Top Pitchers tool, which I've been referring to, I'm giving you numbers directly off of it. That is free. So definitely pull that up as we're going through some of these pitchers. NBA Big Board as well, and PGA Top Golfers. So that's going to be analysts. I just got done doing the PGA Live Before Lock show with Ben Rasa. We had a great time talking the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit. Not the greatest golf tournament on planet Earth, but I think there's a lot of money to be made by making some stances this week. Check out what our exposures are, what Alex Baker, the number one player in the world's exposures are, and stop guessing and start winning. Next on the board today, we've got Kansas City, 10.5 total runs, Boston, minus 155 on that side of it. This entire game, I mean, we've seen some immaculate hitting weather here in Boston of late. These games have just had some massive totals on them, and I can totally see why, and it's come to fruition just about every single time. I have some apprehension because both of these pitchers have been pretty decent. I mean, Martin Perez, not so much. Mike Minor, for sure, has been pretty darn decent this entire season. I don't even know how much I'm going to get to these pitchers, but I have waning interest in stacks here. Talk to me about the pitching first, and we'll kind of expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you as far as Mike Minor is a pitcher that I think is decent. He'll give up some power. He's allowed a 212 expected ISO to righties this year, 23% strikeout percentage. Martin Perez doesn't miss a lot of bats, but also typically does a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the park. But at the same time, this game still has, an 11 total. You've seen very favorable hitting conditions in Boston. Looks like there could be some weather issues tonight as well. But I still am interested here just because of the park, just because of, the total for both of these teams. And I think you have pretty good lineups in terms of power upside and salary here as well. When you look at Boston, you have Kike at the top at a pretty good price point. The middle of the lineup's expensive, but very good with Martinez, Bogarts, and Devers. You get a guy with tons of power at a cheap price tag in a favorable platoon split in Hunter Renfroe batting sixth. Christian Vasquez at catcher is fine. Even Michael Chavez, batting ninth is someone you can use as a lower owned play to round out a stack. And then on the Kansas City side, I know Jorge Soler has had his issues, but I really like him against the pitcher like Perez that isn't going to miss bats. Soler is going to put the ball in play at 3,500 most likely, and he can do a lot of damage when he actually hits the ball. Perez and Merrifield obviously priced up, but in decent spots. But then you get to Hunter Dozier, who's similar to Soler, I think, as far as he's got a lot of power, and you expect him to put the ball in play against Perez. So I think there is still a lot of upside here, even though I agree that neither pitcher is like a total gas can, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we still are seeing 80% humidity. We're still seeing 80-degree weather. We're still, it's going to have a little bit of precipitation, it looks like. But for the most part, one one place to be looking at. I mean, first base for me is wide open now because no Shohei to just slam in there and play over the field every single night. So maybe going to Hunter Dozier, who has that first base and outfield eligibility, makes a lot of sense over on DK. For the Boston Red Sox side, I mean, I see Kike. I've been playing him quite a bit as well. I'm probably not going to get to a ton of him against Mike Minor. But again, it's still decent enough hitting conditions. And you alluded and talked about all the bats here from the Boston side. And if there's anything you want to add to that, go ahead.
The only thing I would add, Greg and I talked about it this morning, and ownership has changed a bit, but the idea still holds. And it's something we've kind of talked about with Boston in general lately. As a team, they're getting a lot of ownership. We still actually have them projected to be a little bit under-owned in terms of compared to their top stack percentage. But if you look a little bit deeper also, Kike Hernandez getting like 20% ownership on DraftKings, Renfroe at 17%, Bogarts at 12%, Verdugo at 9%. But then you look at like JD Martinez at 6%, Devers at 6%, Vasquez at 4%. There's still ways you can stack this team and get pretty strong players and not have a ton of combined ownership. Like, for example, if you just ignore Kike and Verdugo at the top and you go Martinez, Bogarts, Devers, Renfroe, Vasquez, you're getting a few really low-owned guys in the middle of that order. So, it's kind of one example of a way where you're not sacrificing a ton of upside and you still have plenty of very good hitters. It's a much deeper team. It's different than like the Angels where it's like, if you don't play Ohtani, what's the point? With the Red Sox, there's a lot of different guys that you can play and not really be sacrificing upside.
Yeah, if the Angels score 8 runs, I can guarantee you Ohtani's going to have like 6 RBIs in this spot. Like, that's what a time to be alive. We still can't play the man in DFS today. Oh my God. I mean, you play him infinity percent like I am at pitcher, but that's a different story. San Diego at Cincinnati, a great American ballpark. Love this place. 10 total runs here, plus 163 Cincinnati. We do have some weather concerns here. This is why you need to be in the chat over at the Slack channel for Awesemo.com, Awesemo Plus subscribers, excuse me. Make sure you're checking in with the news god. He's also got the Awesemo MLB Twitter stuff that he's going to just be firing off, helping you know exactly what's going on here. I don't think that there's going to be a crazy issue so long as the game doesn't get delayed before the start of it. I mean, does that limit any interest? Because Joe Musgrove is a fantastic play. I mean, looking at all of his underlying metrics here, going up against a Cincinnati team that does certainly have some lefty power at the top end of it, but otherwise is pretty gross. And you're seeing a 30.8% K percentage for Musgrove on the season. Popular. Should we have any kind of waning apprehension of rostering him today?
The only thing that I would point to as at least like a mild concern is I don't think this is the most strikeout friendly Cincinnati lineup. They have Votto, they have Votto batting 4th. They have Alejo Lopez batting 5th, who I don't think is any good, but looking at his minor league numbers, he doesn't really strike out either. Jesse Winker, obviously a very good hitter, hitting 2nd, who puts the ball in play a lot. So I think that would be like the one thing that I point to if you're looking for a reason to go somewhere other than Musgrove is he could have a very good start, but Cincinnati could also put the ball in play. Greg also had some concerns this morning that Musgrove's strikeout numbers have been down since they started enforcing the sticky substance rule. I said I'm not too concerned about that because his spin rate hasn't really gone down. His called strike plus swinging strike percentage is down like 3 points, but it's still like 29%, which is very, very good. So I'm not overly concerned. I'm right now thinking it's kind of just a coincidence, but that's certainly something to at least keep in the back of your mind, especially if like you're just on the fence where it's like, oh, I want to play someone other than Musgrove, but I'm scared to. Maybe he really is going to struggle a little bit getting strikeouts going forward. I don't think that's the most likely case, but it's certainly possible based on what we've seen. So I really like Musgrove here. Those are kind of just the concerns I have if I had to start listing concerns that I have.
Yeah, we got El Negro Loco there in the chat. Good to see you, my dude. Boston and Cincinnati, the 2 spots we need to watch for. So he's going to keep you updated. He's going to keep you apprised of the situations. There's actual rain there as opposed to, I don't know, Cleveland to Detroit, where there's not actual rain?
Yeah, the Cleveland game's not on the slate for them to just cancel it for no reason.
Do you want to flick them off or should I? Because you got
it.
Okay, yeah, no. Top 10 lineup from one Adam Scherer. I had, top 50 with a one-off. I mean, Eddie Rosario was a great play yesterday. I don't understand. What are we doing here? MLB?
Yeah, 25% Mejia, finished 20th with Rosario. Not a big Indians fan right now.
So you still had a good day, but I mean, that's shocking because you paid the rake with Mejia.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh God, it's so gross. But you know what? That's why you're shit my money. Yeah, just flat out taking dollars no matter what. You also had some dudes play Cleveland Bats against you in cash. So that was nice. That's another conversation for a different day. I don't understand why you would be incurring that risk, but so long as that game's good to go. I mean, we've got both the confirmed lineups here on both sides. I love Tommy Pham today. I love Fernando Tatis, but he's just got crazy ownership. Jake Cronenworth, maybe not as big of a power hitter as what people think, but still a fantastic play to hear today. Manny Machado. I mean, this is just such a fantastic park upgrade for this team, and I don't think that can really be emphasized enough, but I guess it's showing up in the ownership at this point in time. Vladimir Gutierrez also limiting hard contact this season, 32.7% hard hit percentage, but I don't really care. This Padres lineup's in such a good spot.
Yeah, Gutierrez has been fine this year, like you said, not giving up crazy power numbers, but he has allowed a 209 ISO to righties, 229 expected ISO, 180 expected ISO to lefties. So not doing a great job of limiting power, just not being a total, gas can, but also not getting a lot of strikeouts, only a 20.5% strikeout percentage against righties, 15.7% against lefties. You're going to let guys with as much power as Pham, Tatis, Machado, Cronenworth, Grisham, Myers, this whole freaking lineup in Cincinnati, put the ball in play. Normally good things aren't going to happen to you. So I'm right on board with going back to the Padres. I do think that, like, if the ownership holds how it is right now, where the Padres have the highest ownership on the slate, I would rather just, be getting more Toronto, Boston, Houston, teams like that. But that's more of just my style of play in tournaments. It's not saying don't play the Padres, because it's obviously a very good spot.
Do you know if strikeout props still count so long as they have one pitch and then the game were to get rained out?
I have absolutely no idea.
I have absolutely no idea either. That's something that I want to check into, but I'm pretty sure it is. I think there might be a risk where if a random storm hops over top of the ballpark in this spot, you had the monkey knife fight. I already like Gutierrez. I already like his under of 3.5 strikeouts. It's the less than 3.5 strikeouts in the more or less game section. You compare that with more, or in this case, if we're building on that narrative, less than 6.5 for Joe Musgrove, even though I think he's in a fantastic spot here as well. But that's something else to take a look at for monkey knife fight. I will do some looking into that, because I think there might be a place to capitalize on something like that. But as for Cincinnati, nothing to add on that side, right?
No, I mean, if you're looking to leverage, you can look to Winker, but he's almost 6K. The guys that I would want to play from the Reds are.
Did you click on his name and then the shock of it just hit you a little bit?
Yeah, not the number I was expecting to see. So yeah, I mean the Reds are priced to face me, so I think it's gonna be really tough to take them against Joe Musgrove.
Oh my God, that's so great. What's your best pitch?
Curveball, slider. Didn't really have a fastball. Just learned how to throw breaking stuff.
Just that 55-mile-an-hour curveball coming in.
Yep,
it's good stuff. It's good stuff. That's me too. All right. Next up here on the board, we've got the Mets going into Atlanta, -147. This entire game just kind of did not appeal to me whatsoever as I was looking through it this morning on both sides. Max Fried, whatever. Peterson, whatever. Just talk to me about pitching. We'll kind of expand from there. But I just don't have interest in this entire game, it feels like.
I have a little bit of interest here.
Okay.
Fried at 81 or 8,300, I think is fine. He's someone that I think you can use as a pivot to Steven Matz, who's getting a little bit more ownership. He's not a great strikeout guy. He's got about a 21% strikeout percentage against righties this year, but he's also a pretty good pitcher in general. 4.1 implied run total for the Mets is solid. I don't really have any issues with Fried. I don't think he's a great play. I don't think he's a bad play. Where I do have interest is the Braves bats, though, because David Peterson is someone that has had some issues with right-handed power in particular this year. He struck out 22.5% of righties, which is okay, but it's 8 points or 9 points lower than his strikeout percentage against lefties. He's allowed a 220 ISO to righties, 364 expected WOBA to righties, and now he's running into a team that has Acuna, Albies, Riley, Swanson, from the top through the middle of this order. The only lefty in the lineup, not including Max Fried, is Freddie Freeman, who of course is very good on his own. So I am interested in the Braves, who right now are only getting about 4% aggregate ownership on DraftKings.
I mean, for me, the thing on DraftKings is the guys I don't want to play are at the top of the lineup and they're crazy expensive, and everybody else is going to be playing them too. It seems like, I guess my tiebreaker heading over to the top stacks. So I will say Atlanta, earlier I was looking, I have under 4K on FanDuel, Freddie Freeman. I'm happy to go left on left there. Cunha is the only guy there at 4.5K, but otherwise it's Albies, 3.1K, Austin Riley, 2.8K, Dansby Swanson's 2,500, Almonte, 2,300. I think that's an interesting stack if you're playing NOLA, kind of pairing it together, so long as the ownership isn't completely crazy in that spot. I think FanDuel, there's some really interesting ways to be building. Obviously, if you're going to play Ohtani like me, you don't have to worry about it too much. But Atlanta actually going a tiny bit over owned, but nothing crazy. I mean, 6.2% ownership share, 4.2% chance of being the top stack. But I mean, as you said, you're going to be targeting those top end dudes.
Yeah. And looking at the ownership on DraftKings for Atlanta, Riley's getting some, Acuna's getting some. Everyone else on the team, all the hitters are sub 2%. So, I that's another reason I'm interested. Like the aggregate ownership is in line with their top stack percentage. But if you just like actually pay attention to the ownership on players, like it seems like a lot of people are going to be using Acuna one-offs or Riley one-offs, not necessarily full stacking, taking Freeman at 5,400 or taking Albies at 5,400. Like it's definitely a spot I think you can pay up to be contrarian, and there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, Freeman, 5,400 left on left. Who cares? Like it's Freddie Freeman. I'm happy to go that direction every single day and twice on, I guess, what day is it today? Wednesday, twice on Wednesday. Guys, definitely check out that MLB props tool. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but this thing is fantastic. I mean, I've been referring to it for Monkey Knife Fight stuff. It just seems like these strikeout numbers have just been very, very high. It started to level out here a little bit. But betting some of these unders is just a fantastic way to be going about your business. The MLB player props tool for strikeouts and for home runs does so much of the work for you. If you have legalized betting in your state and you're not taking advantage of this tool now at this point in time, you're just kind of flat out doing it wrong. I mean, you have guys like Alex Baker, Adam Scherer, everybody behind the scenes, DeColts, Steve Buzzard, who wins everything. I mean, everybody's putting in a crazy amount of work to make these tools the best in the industry. And right now, expected win percentage, expected ROI put directly on the page in front of you. Domingo Germán taking underneath 4.5 strikeouts for him. 49% expected ROI. Looks like it's going to be the best one on the board. I really like that spot for him. That's for strikeouts specifically. Vladimir Gutierrez as well, the under 4.5 I alluded to earlier. Another great spot to be looking like investing in. So definitely head over there. Check out all of those offerings because they are only going to keep getting bigger and better. The tools are just the best part. I mean, I think we're pretty fun little personalities over here on the YouTube streets, but if you want to be winning money, which is kind of what the goal is for us, telling you what we're going to be playing, we want to help. We are teachers, we are instructors, but at the same time, it really comes down to the data. So take a look at that prop tool, and it's as good as it gets. Minnesota, 9 runs. Chicago White Sox, minus 118 here in this spot. I talked to yesterday, Giolito did not come to fruition. I will tell you that. I mean, that's the kind of potential you're running into with this Minnesota Twins team. I'm going to test my luck again here. As a Twins fan, Dylan Cease looks pretty darn good on the season. 29.2% K percentage, 35.9% hard hit percentage. I mean, I know the kind of potential that exists in this lineup. I'm very, very aware, not that it's always come to fruition here and there, but what is your interest in Dylan Cease here? Because I think I'm going to be over the field.
I'm very interested at his ownership level. It's kind of like the similar theory to what we talked about with Kevin Gausman yesterday, except the Twins also aren't quite as scary as the Dodgers are.
Fact.
And like Cease is just at this price point where he doesn't make a ton of sense because like he's $500 more than Joe Musgrove. He's only $500 less than Aaron Nola, but that's going to be reflected most likely in his ownership as well. Right now we have him projected for about 2% ownership on DraftKings, whereas you have 47% going to Nola. You have 28% going to Musgrove. You have 22% going to Bassett for 800 more. Dylan Cease has the 3rd highest strikeout percentage on this slate behind Ohtani and Musgrove. He's he walks a decent amount of guys, but still has a respectable 19.5% strikeout minus walk percentage. He's just been very good this season, and it's not like that was a total surprise. This is one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. Seems to be putting things together. 30% strikeout percentage against lefties, 29% against righties. He's done a very good job of limiting power to both sides. 118 ISO to lefties, 116 to righties. So, can things go sideways? Of course. The Twins have competent hitters in their lineup, but Dylan Cease has a ton of upside here, and it's not like it would be surprising at all if he outscores any of those top guys, Bassett, Nola, or Musgrove.
I didn't know it was 3rd highest K percentage on the slate. These are the things I got to make sure. Yeah, 29.2%. Sure enough, it's there. Bailey Ober, this dude is gaining a bunch of traction. I've seen his name all over the place today. It's only a 6.6% chance of being in that top 2 pitcher spot. Right now, coming in with ownership 18.7%. So, I mean, it's just going an over-owned spot. I feel like he's a stay away for me today against some of these White Sox. I mean, I wanted to see that lineup first to see how many lefties were in there. We got Moncada, Grandal can be on both sides, Goodwin in the 5-hole, Gavin Sheets, who was that 2K special the other day that I talked about. I think I kind of want to stay away at this ownership, but I think Bailey Ober is going to be a good pitcher, just maybe not at this ownership today for me.
Yeah, I have a few pretty sizable concerns. So I'll start by saying I think Ober is a good point per dollar play. I understand why he's getting ownership. He just seems like a pretty decent pitcher, and he's $5,700. There's not much around him that is going to take ownership away. Like you're sure shit not playing Matt Harvey against the Astros instead of Bailey Ober. So I understand why he's getting ownership, and I think it makes sense. But I do have some concerns here. For one, and it's a point Greg made this morning as well, they just haven't been letting him go deep into games. The most pitches he's thrown is 82. You had the start against Seattle a couple of starts ago where he was pitching well, had 6 strikeouts in 4 innings, and they pulled him after 63 pitches. You've seen kind of similar things a couple of times where that's happened. So there's the concern that he's only going to go 4 or 5 pitches. So how high is his ceiling really? And then another concern I have is that I pulled a bunch of data from like every pitcher that's thrown at least 25 pitches as a starter this season. Bailey Ober has the second biggest drop off in spin rate on his fastball since June 6th. Now, granted, he only made 1 start in the majors before that. So it could just be that for whatever reason, maybe he wasn't using stuff and it's just a coincidence that his spin rate was super high in that first start. But you've seen the spin rate come down on his breaking stuff and his fastball. His fastball, though, out of all the pitchers that I looked at, which is 165 pitchers, the only pitcher with a bigger drop off in spin rate on his fastball so far is Trevor Bauer. And it's not by a big margin at all. On the flip side, you've actually seen his called strike plus swinging strike percentage go up to 27.2% from 25.5. So he hasn't had an issue as far as results so far, but you have seen a noticeable difference in spin rate for him. One of the biggest there is. So that's at least a minor concern as well for a pitcher who's getting a lot of ownership and does have some other question marks too.
Yeah, one just being the ownership for sure. And the White Sox are potent enough. I could see this being fine and getting away, like being able to roster over and being fine. But considering he's getting as much ownership as he is, I feel like it's pretty easy stay away at this point in time. I'm definitely going to be lighter. Maybe I'll have a couple shares just because, as you said, the price point, but not my favorite play to be going to on the board here today. As for Twins hitters up against Cease, not a spot I really want to be picking on again. I mean, can we make an argument for somebody like Donaldson, who, ended up going yard at super low ownership last night, has been on a nice little hitting streak, even in a game that he ended up K-ing 3 times against Cleveland 2 times ago. Still went 2 for 5 in that game with a homer. I mean, he's starting to come on a little bit. The rest of this lineup, we know Cruz, Kepler, you can have some interest in, but not going to be a priority for me today.
Yeah, not a priority for me going against Cease. There's just a lot of really good pitchers on this slate. And when Cease gets in trouble, it's typically walks and stuff like that doesn't really turn into fantasy points that easily. So not overly, not really excited at all there. Plus, if you're someone into narratives, there's a definite non-zero chance Josh Donaldson gets ejected from this game in like his first at bat after he gets hit. So there's that. But I mean, obviously that's not something I'm factoring in. It's more just something I'm interested in watching.
Yeah, well, no, he just tilts everybody. So there's that. Was there something specific that I missed here? I feel like
he homered off Giolito yesterday as he crossed home plate. He yelled something about the ball not being sticky anymore. Giolito said after the game, if you're going to talk shit to my face. And then I just saw a tweet, like, I think as we were starting the show, that Josh Donaldson's on like Instagram Live right now, just like talking shit about the White Sox again. So I don't know. Could be an interesting one.
I was going to say, as a Twins fan, normally I'm in the loop on these kind of things. I mean, I saw that he went across home plate, and I mean, it seems like everybody can go to a little bit, but I didn't hear that he had yelled something about spin. That's awesome. This dude is coming after everybody in big leagues. It seems like every single pitcher he has some gripe with. As for the White Sox on the other side, I mean, I'm looking primarily at the lefties. I mean, you can always make a contrarian pay up for Grandal. I think previous iterations of a contrarian pay up for Grandal at the catcher position, but maybe not the best play at this point in time this season. Still has the homer ability at super low ownership, but I'm not looking to play a dude with a 182 batting average here, or like just limited power at this point in time. But what are you doing with the White Sox here against this popular cheapie?
I have some interest just because, for one, Ober's getting ownership, and for two, where he has struggled this year has been against left-handed bats. in particular. He's allowed a 333 ISO, 250 expected ISO to lefties. Not very good. And his strikeout percentage against lefties is about 9 points lower than it is against righties. So, I think looking to Yohan Moncada, Grandal, Brian Goodwin, like the lefties in the middle of this order, certainly have some merit. Even Gavin Sheets is a 2K guy I think you could use if you need it. So it is interesting to me just because Ober's going to get some ownership. And I do think the White Sox are running out a pretty good lineup that can take advantage of him. But at the same time, they're certainly not on par with teams like the Astros and the Blue Jays.
Definitely. All right. We got 2 to go here. Making fantastic time. Baltimore, 9.5 runs going into Houston. Houston, the team that disappointed me beyond human comprehension yesterday. Apparently the Baltimore Orioles are the best team in baseball when they go into this ballpark here of late. So there's that. The 10 runs there, 7th through 9th inning was quite something to behold yesterday. But now facing Luis Garcia, I don't know. I've been going back and forth with him all day. I think a lot of it has to do with the price point, but I can't really get a good gauge on what I want to do with him specifically. He's been good, 27.4% K percentage. This is a phenomenal lineup to be targeting for the most part. Outside of those top 4, there's really nothing that makes me scared on the back half of this lineup, except for Ramon Urias, who's also like God now too. But who else are we like? What are you doing with Luis Garcia today?
I like him here. I think the price point's a little tough to get to, like you said. Basically the same reasons that Dylan Cease is tough to get to. He's more expensive than Musgrove. He's really close in price to Nola. But also Garcia is getting considerably more ownership than Cease. So that's another guy where, he's taking some ownership from Cease. It makes me really interested in Cease. But I also think this is a very good spot for Garcia for a couple of reasons. For one, the Orioles, despite what we've seen the last couple of days, aren't a very good offense. But Garcia also has been particularly good against right-handed bats. He has a 31% strikeout percentage, 176 expected ISO is reasonable. But that strikeout percentage is really important because when you look at the Orioles, not only are they a right-handed heavy lineup, but most of their best hitters are also right-handed. Cedric Mullins accepted, Anthony Santander you can throw in there as well. But Mancini, Mountcastle, Hayes all hit from the right side. So Garcia, has the favorable platoon split there to kind of neutralize those guys most likely. And then if he can just, get around Mullins and Santander, then at least in theory, he should be fine with Leyba, Franco, Urias, Severino throughout the rest of the lineup. So I think it sets up, as a good matchup for him. We've seen him get deeper into starts as well. I'm still not in love with that price tag, but I do think he has significant upside here against the Orioles.
Yeah, his ownership right now at this point in time, too, it's coming in lower owned than what his top 2 percentage is. I mean, second most likely pitcher to finish as a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings tonight. So there's that fractionally over Steven Matz. And I definitely like Luis Garcia, I think, more than Steven Matz, even for 1,800 more. I'll find the money to make that work. But Joe Musgrove kind of being a little bit cheaper there. It's difficult for me to I like Joe Musgrove and I like this spot for him, but I don't know. Luis Garcia is definitely somebody who will be in my pool. I'll definitely be having some of, but hard for me to figure out exactly what to do with him. On FanDuel, I think at his price tag at 10.5, I'm happy to go down to Ohtani for 1,000 cheaper, and I'm happy to get up to Nola for 500 more. Would you have any kind of a pull on FanDuel specifically between Nola, Luis Garcia, and Ohtani?
So pulling up their ownership now, I mean, it kind of depends on the rest of your lineup. I lean towards Ohtani because he's the cheapest. You're getting that discount, 1K off Garcia, 1,500 off Nola, and I think Ohtani's ceiling is it's just as high as those guys. He has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate, the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. So I would say I lean towards Ohtani because the ceiling's there, the ownership's not. All that looks great. When you look at Garcia and Nola, I prefer Nola if you're just talking about who do I think gets more points, but I also don't think Nola is like 4 times as likely to outscore Garcia, which is what the ownership essentially is saying. He's less than 2x according to the top pitcher percentage. So if I have like a contrarian stack and I'm looking to go to either Nola or Garcia, I would lean Nola because I think he does project higher. But if I have one of the more popular stacks, I think one easy spot where you can just be a little bit different is make that pivot from Nola to Luis Garcia, get the much lower owned pitcher who has a similar range of outcomes.
Matt Harvey on the mound for the Baltimore Orioles. I really don't. What I could point to just about 48 different things on why Matt Harvey is somebody that we should be targeting today. For one, it's Matt Harvey. 2, he has no business being a major leaguer. 3, 513 expected slugging, crazy amount of hard contact, expected ERA over 10. It's just so bad. We got to have a lot of Houston interest. Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's nothing negative to say. Matt Harvey doesn't miss bats. He gives up power. The Astros have power. They have a lot of really good hitters in their lineup. The lineup's not even like that difficult to get to, I don't think. As far as stacking, the top, like, oh, I'm on FanDuel. I was about to say, how is Altuve 4,200? The top of the order for the most part is expensive. Altuve, Gurriel, Alvarez, Correa, all expensive. But Brantley's cheap.
Was that a song that you just did? Did you sing? Is this the tip-off show?
Correa. No, I just Correa. Totally forgot how to say his name for some reason.
Oh, that was great. That was a different Adam that we just saw. That was okay. We're back to work. Go ahead.
But I mean, you can use Brantley, you can use Tucker, you can use Garcia, all these guys to kind of balance out that salary and still allow yourself to get some good one-offs or good pitching around it. Very good spot against Baltimore. They've essentially had 2 bullpen games in a row too. So you've gotten a pretty worn-down bullpen that isn't very good anyway. And then you're probably going to have a third bullpen game because Matt Harvey is starting. So lots of things to like about Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing, Robo Garcia, not a guy. I mean, they're 3K though, but Robo Garcia, Miles Straw, not my favorite plays on planet Earth. I mean, it's going to be pretty condensed. I know they'll get some ownership just because they're 3K. I'll probably avoid them in a lot of my stacks because I want to really try to spike the upside. I think I've got enough interest in pitchers that I can mix and match and make it work just to be able to really get the top end pieces of that lineup. But anybody on the Baltimore side that you might want to be playing against Garcia? I mean, you are the Baltimore Orioles whisperer at this point in time.
I'm pretty much good. Like, I don't think you're getting quite enough ownership going to Garcia. I don't think the Orioles are that useful on this slate. If you were going again, and it's tough because, like, for the same reasons I was saying when we talked about Garcia, the guys that normally want to go to Mountcastle, Hayes, Mancini, they're going up against a pitcher who's had a ton of success against right-handed bats this year, has done a very good job, striking them out and limiting damage. So that's really tough. Mullins at 4,100 is fine. He's having a great year, gives you stolen base upside, has some power, but is also an outfielder. So there's a million options there. Santander, if he's in the lineup, is cheap and has some power, but not anyone I'm going out of my way to get here against Houston.
We got 8 minutes. We got 1 game to go. We got plenty of time. So we're going to talk the Awesemo Hall of Fame here quick. Something that we want to be able to talk about at any turn. We love seeing your successes. We've seen so many massive screenshots for NBA Showdown on DraftKings and FanDuel. We've seen so many different opportunities where people. So right off the bat, Brian Nutt there. Thanks for the entire Awesemo team for the work that you do. Josh Engelman and Lofty, great tools and great advice. Nice 2K hit for him on that. What would that have been? Reggie Jackson, the top tier. I mean, that is a nifty little lineup there. That is contrarian as it gets. Yeah, that's good stuff. I guess that's for the 2 game together combination, but love that. Good stuff. We've got another one. JTB, first optimal lineup W in the books. Time to build from here. $1 into 25. Dude, that's the good stuff. We love being able to see people building bankrolls, seeing successes across the industry in different sites, whether that's DraftKings or FanDuel, or whether you're playing over at Monkey Knife Fight. One of my favorite things that happened today is somebody came into the chat during the Monkey Knife Fight stuff. I had a couple props that I put together yesterday and then ended up panning out for everybody that was checking out the content. That's the good stuff. That's what I really love about this job. So definitely send that stuff to the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Get that first week when you bank, when you finish in the top 3 of a 5,000 plus tournament, and don't split it more than 2 ways. That is what you want to be doing to be able to get behind the scenes and see what's up there and available. All right, let's round it out. Texas, 8 total runs here going into Oakland, minus 193. I wouldn't really call this a late night hammer when I don't really like either of these offenses, but one guy I guess we got to talk about. Do you believe in one Chris Bassett this season, who is at $10,500 on DraftKings now? I mean, I can honestly say there's a lot of pitchers I expected to see that were more than 10K this season. He is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like, do I believe he's good? Yeah, I've been a Bassett guy for a couple of years. Okay. I don't think he should be more expensive than Aaron Nola and Ohtani and Cease and all these guys. I think he's a good pitcher. I think he's good at run prevention. I think the pitching conditions tonight are favorable. The matchup is great. So I like Bassett. I understand why he's getting ownership. If he were getting less ownership, I would be saying he's a very, very good play. So I think he's owned pretty much where he should be, and that's reflected in the top pitchers tool as well, where his top 2 pitcher percentage is in line with his ownership percentage. I think there's a good chance he gets pretty deep into the game. He does a good job limiting damage, and he still gets enough strikeouts. He's not in that same category as Ohtani and Musgrove and those guys at 30+%, but he still comes in with about a 25% strikeout percentage. It's supposed to be around 55, 60 degrees in Oakland. ballpark that favors pitchers in general. So all that looks very, very good for Bassett. I think he's a good play. I just don't think he necessarily should be the most expensive, but it becomes interesting too. Greg and I talked about it this morning. Like, on the one hand, you're not really getting an ownership discount in the context of the entire slate. He's projected for about 22% ownership, which is a reasonable amount. But where I think it gets interesting is if you do happen to have a team that maybe your hitters are a little bit chalkier than you would like, he's still getting half the ownership or less than half the ownership of Aaron Nola. So that's one spot where, it's probably not like the only pivot you would need to make, because you're going to have other people playing, Bassett instead of Nola as well. But that's one spot where you can just very quickly knock off, make one move and be different than a lot of the field that is just going to go to Nola over Bassett.
And on DraftKings, I've been playing a lot more cash in MLB than anything else. And more cash in this sport than I do in other sports, for sure. Just because I think that there is some opportunity there. Aaron Nola definitely is going to be the primary SP1 for me on DK. I'm probably not going to be playing Chris Bassett whatsoever. But on FanDuel, 9,800. If I'm looking to make a cash lineup over there, I think there's definitely some equity in going to him as opposed to Aaron Nola at 11K, depending on what else can get you there. As you said, I think he is pretty secure to go deep into this game. You get that extra boost for the quality start over there. 9,800 as opposed to 11K. I know that you're primarily over on DK, but I got to at least ask, would you have some interest in possibly going Bassett over him for a cash game situation?
Yeah, it would really come down to the bats for me, because I would still prefer Nola. If price doesn't matter, I'll take Nola, but I wouldn't be looking to sacrifice too much just to get from Bassett to Nola, because I do think they're very, very similar.
Yeah, and he's coming in with 19% ownership for tournaments, only an 8.4% chance of being a top pitcher there. I think for tournaments, Nola 11K, he definitely has the ceiling that you're looking for. All of those good things for sure. But looking on both of these offenses, I'm going to have the same interest that I have almost every day on the Oakland Athletics, and that's going to be Matt Olson, Matt Chapman. You're going to see up against Colby Allard, a lefty. Wind's blowing out, but it is 55 degrees, I think is going to be what it is at first pitch. Yeah, 57 degrees. And you've got Chad Pinder, maybe, who ended up going yard. Jed Lowry has a little bit of pop. What are you doing with the rest of this Oakland team?
I think it's just going to be really tough because of the hitting conditions. Colby Allard is not great. He's not bad. You can certainly make a case for guys like Chapman, but like Chapman's 6,100 on DraftKings. It's just, it's the same thing as we had with Matt Olson, yesterday against Fulton Evans.
Yep.
Laureano is 5,400. Like, these guys are really expensive facing a mediocre pitcher in pretty miserable hitting conditions. So I think it's going to be pretty tough to have much interest in Oakland. As a side note, not related to Oakland, we did just get the Orioles lineup. No Austin Hayes, replaced by DJ Stewart. So you get a left-handed bat instead of a right-handed bat, but you also get a guy that strikes out like 28% of the time and isn't as good as Austin Hayes. So yeah, an even weaker lineup than normal for Baltimore.
Well, that's nifty. I like that. I'm looking also, I will let it be known, Matt Olson will always be a one-off for me from now until the end of time. I just don't see any way that I won't have him. People always talk about left on left. For whatever reason, people stray away from that more than they do right on right. And I will never understand that. He's got no splits for the most part. Actually, against lefties, a 997 OPS this season, only 920 against righties. Only, we'll put that in in quotations, only 920 OPS. But then 379 OBP, 618 slugging. Yeah, sign me up for some Matt Olson one-offs.
I think that's fine.
Okay. Well, just saying, yeah, terrible hitting conditions comparably to everything else. But my God, we got done before 6 o'clock Eastern time. I feel pretty proud about the work we've done. Adam, any final words for the people?
No, I think we covered it all. So good luck tonight.
Play Ohtani. That's Adam. I'm Eric. Play Ohtani, play Ohtani, play Ohtani. And also Correa, because he decided to sing, and that's what I have to do. So best of luck to you all tonight. We will see you back here tomorrow again for the deeper dive. I should say our shows. Don't tune off yet. I apologize. I got to finish this. I got to do my job correctly. Eytan and Greg coming up next on this very same stream. NBA Live Before Lock with Lofty and Josh, 8 p.m. Eastern time, taking you up to the 9 p.m. Eastern time tip of the Suns and Clippers Game 6 here in Los Angeles, California. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell on the way out. Best of luck tonight.
keep it rolling here on Live Before Lock. Myself, Eytan Shander with Greg Ehrenberg at Ehrenberg DFS at Shander Show for me is we have some heavy lifting taking over for Eric, most importantly, Adam in the house as well. Don't worry, right back. NBA Live Before Lock coming your way at the top of the hour. So we can't physically go like an extra 15, 20 minutes. As much as Greg wants to push this program for about an hour and a half, we do have to get out at 7 o'clock, sir.
Hey, perfect amount of time right there. Intro just gave me enough time to upload live lineups. When is the last time you shaved?
Well, it's funny you ask that, okay? Because I have been getting a ton of shit from my wife, my mother-in-law, from other hosts that I do shows with throughout the day, and I'm sure I'm going to add you to this list now here because you can't wait to jump at and chomp at the bit coming at me. The last time I shaved was probably like 3.5 weeks ago, I'd say.
You look like, do you remember, you'll get this reference because you're in your 30s as I am. Do you remember Wooly Willy where he took the magnet and you were able to move his hair around to different parts of the head? Like, I feel like I could take a magnet right now and I could give you a full head of hair and make you look like, the painting guy who did the painting and was all calm.
Bob Ross.
Yeah, that's right. All it would take. Yeah, you take one of those magnets, put it on your head, and you're Bob Ross.
I love those magnets, by the way. And who would have known it was a precursor of what I'd look like years later? But that was one of the funniest, like the most fun, stupid, like dollar things you could get at the stationery store was that magnet game.
Oh, it ruled. Wooly Willy used to, I don't even know. We had the dumbest toys when we were here, like Etch-a-Sketch and
Yes.
Wooly Willy and yeah, all that stuff sucks now.
So you want to know the irony of all of this is that I met my wife like 2.5 years ago, right? And at the time that I met her, and this will show you how much she was willing to put aside in order to make this relationship work. But for like the first, I don't know, like 3 months of our relationship when we were dating, imagine this, right? I want you to look at this nasty woolly shit that I have on my face, Greg. Double this. Because I went about like 5 months without trimming or shaving this beard, and it just keeps curling. You know, it's the Middle Eastern, Israeli, Palestinian in me, where the hair keeps curling. It doesn't grow out or down. So yeah, it could even be uglier than this. Imagine that.
I mean, that's something. God, she must really like you.
I'm telling you, what's too late now. We got the kid, we got the house. She's locked in for a little bit, but no, that's what I'm saying is the same person who allowed this relationship to start and to eventually bud, Greg, is now coming down on me because my beard is too long. So the next time you and I work together, I won't have this on my face.
Hey, listen, I'd make your decisions, but don't let me pressure you into changing your appearance.
Well, it's not you necessarily. It's you are the last of like 15 people in the last 2 days that have said something. And I'm sure the stream, I'm pulling it up right now. I'm sure the stream will waste no time following your lead, pointing out the fact of how ugly or nasty or thick this thing is. It's not who has a good baseball beard?
I mean, there aren't like good baseball beards. There's good baseball. You know, there was the old Red Sox team. There's good baseball mustaches, but also, you know, not a considerable amount of time. But, you know, there used to be Catfish Hunter. He had the curly mustache, yes. But yeah, there isn't that much good facial hair in the MLB these days.
I had a bet going with one of the local TV hosts here when I was on last time when the Sixers played basketball. When this thing wasn't as big, but the bet was if they lost. Now it was one of the few games they won in that series, but if they lost that next game, then they would have done something crazy, like some sort of like weird Raleigh fingers or something, you know, that I would have to let grow out for like the next 6 months. So I would be on here with you with some awful looking Raleigh fingers mustache if the Sixers lost one of those games they actually won in the series.
All right, well, here's what's most important. I've been waiting for this to update my lineups, and I was already running them, and now I'm going to have to do it again. So, yeah, so here's the news just came out. We do have the Los Angeles Angels lineup. Okay. For some reason, some of these days lately when the Angels have played, they've been waiting until, like, even when they're playing the first game of the slate, they wait like 30, 40 minutes till the slate starts to put out their lineup. But Ohtani, Rendon, Walsh, Goslin, Fletcher, Iglesias, Suzuki, Ward, and Lagar. So no real surprises in the lineup, except it, for whatever reason, just takes them forever to get it out. But that's good. I'm happy we finally have that.
All right, great. Now, I'm sure stuff is going to keep coming in, right? as we continue to go. So as lineups come in, Greg will segue to something else and adjust his lineups in about 20 seconds. Then we can get back to the conversation. Make sure you hit us up, as you've been told already throughout the day. Make sure you like what you're seeing. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you're not missing programs like Live Before Lock, leading you up to everything. And you want to take advantage, of course, of all of our free tools today, MLB top pitchers, also in the NBA, the big board, and top golfers for PGA. But really, for the specifics here, top pitchers, we'll tell you all about Monkey Knife Fight coming up, sponsor of our program. So where to begin, my friend? We have a couple of bigger games on the slate. There's always going to be a prioritizing, right, of getting to certain pitchers and working at stacks. So just overall, as you're looking at lineups, already adjusting your own, how have you generally approached tonight, Greg?
Playing a lot of the Houston Astros against Matt Harvey. I mean, I make fun of Matt Harvey every time he pitches. I just what's the point? He continues to get work in major leagues. I mean, this guy's got the best job in the world. He sucks at it. He gets paid a whole bunch of money. He shows up, he gets his ass kicked for a few innings, and then he, goes right back to the bench, sits out. I assume he's not, working out or anything in between starts. If he is, he's doing it wrong, and just does it all over again every 5 days. Matt Harvey last 3 years, 7.54 ERA, 11.57, 7.09. I mean, he very rarely has any of decent starts. Last time out against the Blue Jays was arguably his best start of the entire season. Pitched 5 innings, gave up 3 runs, 2 homers. So, the Houston Astros bats, they've been hitting the ball extremely well as of late. It's one of the best offense in baseball. And there's not that much ownership going to them. I don't get why people aren't rostering the Astros more. They only have 8.9% ownership as a team. I think that Matt Harvey just defies all logic when it comes to numbers. There isn't that much variance there. He gives up generally home runs and hard hit balls basically every time he pitches. So to me, I'm pretty heavy overweight to the field. My priority is stacking up the Houston Astros. And then some of these individual hitters, all of them to me are for the most part under-owned. So bringing up some of the Houston individual guys now, guys like, Kyle Tucker, I think he's too cheap. 4,300 on DraftKings. Michael Brantley, 4,500. Both these guys, ownerships 17% for Kyle Tucker. The only guy on the team other than the starting pitcher, Luis Garcia, who's picking up ownership in the teens. Other than that, Jason Castro, single-digit ownership, 1%. Yuli Gurriel, Miles Straw, 1% ownership. The more expensive guys, they're a little harder to fit into lineups due to the pitching situation on the slate, but still, 4% Jose Altuve, 3% Correa, 5% Yordan Alvarez. I'm overweight to everybody in the Astros lineup.
Yeah, we'll get to stacks specific here in a couple of minutes, but to your point, they're not even hitting double-digit ownership shares that we have projected for tonight on DraftKings at least. And granted, it's not like they're at the bottom of that list, but there was something that you saw that you recognized that was a little off, and you jumped on it. So let's start on the opposite end. We'll work our way to some stacks and some one-offs as well here tonight, Greg. But let's look at the pitching tonight, and especially when you're looking at it, building 2 versus the 1 on FanDuel. Nola, my guy, coming out tonight, first time out since he looked like Tom Seaver out there, K&12. So you've got a couple of options where you can clearly pay up for, and you mentioned Luis Garcia as well, is a little bit under that. So where are you starting as far as the most exposure? Which pitcher are you getting to the most tonight across all sites?
All right, so I am doing a final run of my lineups, or at least what's likely going to be the final run of the lineups, because we now have all of the lineups in for the day. Waiting on the Angels. Oddly enough, Angels first game of the slate to start, but yet the last team to submit their lineup. But so doing a final run, I'm almost positive though that Aaron Nola is going to end up being my highest owned pitcher. Although with that said, not that much different in the field. So the last crunch that I ran, I had 50% of Aaron Nola in my lineups on DraftKings. His current projected ownership is at 47.7%. So right around even with the field, but still, I think Aaron Nola just by far the best pitching option on the slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. So if you're playing cash games, you absolutely have to play Nola. To your point, what you said before, he was really good in his last start. The other thing that's been really encouraging about Nola, not one of the guys that's seen a drop off in his spin rate since the pitcher substance crackdown. That's still been in check. His numbers overall for the year, not quite as good as last year, but even so, I mean, 3.97 ERA, 3.7 expected ERA, 3.43 FIP. Guy who's striking up 28.3% of hitters he faces. So Aaron Nola, I think that is the number one overall priority at the pitching spot.
And you want to know why it hasn't dropped off? Because we don't cheat here in Philadelphia, Greg. That's why. We leave that for the Yankees and the Red Sox.
I think every baseball team cheats to some extent. It's something I care so little about. I mean, to me, it's just like, I know people consider, like, what even is the definition of cheating, right? If 90% of pitchers were using some sort of substance on their fingers, I know it's technically against the rules, but it wasn't something that was ever enforced, right? If the speed limit's 45 and you go 46, are you a criminal? It's just something that's not generally enforced. So to me, it was a generally accepted part of baseball. It isn't anymore. They changed it in the middle of the year. So I don't consider the guys who were doing it before cheating, but it's going to massively impact results going forward.
As a fan, I look at it almost the opposite, I think, of the norm, to your point, where if I am rooting for a team that doesn't have one of these guys that gets nailed for it, or if I'm rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles who lose to the Patriots in the Super Bowl because they taped their walkthrough, I'm yelling and screaming, why didn't you tape their walkthrough? Why aren't you injecting steroids, cream in the clear? Why aren't you getting all this sandpaper, sticky shit on your hands? That's where I look at it from as a fan. Do more cheating. Use more things to even things out for you. That's all.
I could get behind that. I don't have an issue with it. I mean, listen, I mean, to an extent, there's always boundaries of everything,
right.
but
yeah,
I mean, but I think there's a lot of stuff where it's like a lot of teams are, bending the rules in some way. And to me also, if it's just something that everybody's doing, and then I know it's not technically a rule change by baseball, it's just a rule enforcement, but I mean, any pitcher who was doing it before, whatever, it doesn't really do anything for me. By the way, God bless the guys like Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole, who are probably going to be worse going forward, that just cashed in on like hundreds of millions of dollars. That would not have, like, think how fortuitous they were just in terms of when their contracts ran up. Because if Garrett Cole's contract had run up this year as opposed to 2 years ago, he's not getting paid anywhere near the same amount of money. Same goes for Trevor Bauer. So, hey, good for those guys.
Oh, it's a great point. We see that all the time, right? You go back to just the influx of all the steroids and back when it was, well, who is the report that the Mitchell report comes out, right? And you have all these names on there, and the majority of these guys are middle infielders, or center fielders, are guys who are just trying to stay up or trying to take advantage of contract year in the sense of playing more games and getting more at bats. It's not just launching the ball out of here. So I think you're right, especially from a pitching standpoint. Going back to your point about Aaron Nola, where it may not be the biggest narrative going on as far as the substance and the checking now is where Major League Baseball is moving forward from it. But if you have one or two examples, like with Aaron Nola you laid out, Greg, where you don't have a dip, you don't have any change, then I think you can feel more confident about continuing to roster him in your lineups.
Yeah, exactly. I think what we've seen from Aaron Nola over the last couple of years is probably who he's going to be. And the main things that I'm looking at are two things. It's number one, looking out for any sort of change in spin rate. If a pitcher, such as Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer, sees a big decrease in their spin rate, it probably means something's changed. Or if pitchers throwing different pitches, like Garrett Cole didn't used to throw a changeup all that much, and now it's become one of his most used pitches over the last few games because, he's just trying to compensate. He can't throw a slider as well anymore. He's trying to find some other version of an off-speed pitch to use. And also think about the adjustment period there's going to be for some of these pitchers where, they're working on different pitches. They're trying different grips. Like I was talking about Garrett Richards the other day as a guy who basically wasn't able to throw any breaking balls anymore. So all of a sudden he breaks out a brand new curveball's last start. He doesn't know how it's going to go. The hitters don't know how it's going to go. He's never thrown it before in a game, and it just ended up being a crappy pitch, and it's just getting hit all over the ballpark. So I think anybody who we don't see any sort of significant change in pitch usage or in spin rate, I think we just expect they're about the same guy going forward.
Real quick, as far as FanDuel is concerned, knowing because you're locked into that one spot, are you getting to anybody or how often are you getting to anybody other than Nola as your pitcher tonight?
Yeah, so I mean, FanDuel is obviously different from a standpoint of Aaron Nola, 27.5% projected ownership now, only a 13.5% chance of being the top overall scorer on FanDuel. Cash games, certainly play him. GPPs, play him as well, but I wouldn't play him quite as much as the field on FanDuel, whereas on DraftKings, a little bit more neutral to him. Other guys that I think are worth pivoting to, like Luis Garcia, only $500 less expensive. Doesn't have the same security that Aaron Nola has, but he's coming at a fifth of the ownership while having somewhat comparable odds of being a top scorer. So Luis Garcia, 8.6% chance of being the top scoring pitcher on FanDuel. Aaron Nola, 13.5% chance. So, we look at, probably 2-1. Aaron Nola outscores Luis Garcia. Yet in terms of ownership, Aaron Nola 6-1. So with that in mind, from a tournament standpoint, there's merit to swap into somebody like Luis Garcia. Same goes for Shohei Ohtani on FanDuel. Very low ownership for Ohtani and risky spot going up against the Yankees. I do have some concerns with Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher going forward. He's been a little bit lucky to this point. That, and he's faced an extremely easy strength of schedule. He's faced a lot of weak offenses, especially as of late. And now going up against the Yankees, who I have underwhelmed a little bit this year, they do have a lot of power in the offense. And I think there is a chance that Shohei Ohtani starts to regress, and it could come tonight. But still, it's all relative to ownership. And Shohei Ohtani only picking up 3% ownership in the pitcher spot on FanDuel. I think he's worth more ownership than that.
All right, so you start to look at now with the option on DraftKings to slide in somebody else. Are you paying up for the most part for that second arm, or are you looking at maybe somebody more in the mid-range, maybe taking advantage of what we have as a super low-performing stack and maybe taking advantage of the pitcher against them?
And by the way, one thing I want to answer also on Aaron Nola, just saw this question come up in the YouTube chat is, where was it? Oh, Robert Black had asked, are there any weather concerns in Philly? Not significant. It's not zero. It is, though, I mean, we're looking at like 20% chance of rain, but that's not until after the game ends. So maybe if the game drags on, the later innings could be an issue, but it's not anything that's changing my exposure. And
it's brutal here, brother.
Oh, humidity, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, same here.
Absolutely brutal here. Now, it's not that hot, to your point, but the humidity is through the roof.
Yeah, that's the same. I do think that could benefit the offense. The issue is that's the case everywhere right now, especially on the Northeast. So it's like, what are we going to do about it? We're going to fade all the humid spots, and we've got no pitchers left to choose from because, it's going to be super humid in New York. It's going to be super humid in Philly. Boston, it's going to be really humid for that game against Kansas City. Potential rain in Cincinnati, also humidity there. Atlanta, there's some humidity. Chicago, there's humidity. At a certain point, I look at it's like every spot is humid. And maybe that's also the reason why, if you look at the outcomes of the early games today, I'll pull up what the scores are right now. We have surprisingly, the lowest scoring game is the Coors Field game, 6-2. But the game in Washington, 8-5 right now in the middle of the game. The game in Milwaukee, 15-7 was the final score. And St. Louis, 7-4 was the final score. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of high-scoring games today. But, if I'm taking pitchers out of my player pool for humidity, I'm left with nobody.
Real quick, and I don't know how much, I think a lot of this will factor in to the individual performance as opposed to maybe the matchup. But do you look at team history? And I don't mean like from the last year or something, but just in general, the Marlins seem to have the Phillies number more often than not, even when things are bad for both teams or good for Philly and bad for Miami. And this is just a small little thing that I have because I'm watching this team and have seen it. Does that ever factor into you as far as like, okay, that Nola is a lock, that all the metrics point to Nola as a strong start tonight, but in the back of your mind, this is a Miami team who has gotten to him, to Wheeler, and to Eflin like it's nothing in the past?
Well, let me look through to see if that's even true. If I look through his game, but first of all, I'll put it out right. It's not something I care about. And
okay,
regardless of what the results,
you don't need to waste time on it if you don't.
No, it's fine because now I'm just kind of interested in general to see some of his career stats against the Marlins. Let me see if this is easily sortable. It isn't on ESPN, maybe on a Baseball Reference, but no, I mean, there's a couple of, but there's a couple of reasons why, right? Because I think this also goes into like the BVP argument that a lot of people bring up. So, if a pitcher is, let's say, good against an individual team or an individual hitter, the problem is that pitchers are not the same year to year. Same teams are not the same year to year, right? It's always different players. So if the idea is just that, like, hey, Aaron Nola, he's afraid of Marlins jerseys, right? He just can't deal with them. Like, that to me would just seem kind of weird. But like, what else would be arguing about? The Marlins have a radically different team this year than they did 2 years ago, right? There's no Giancarlo Stanton in the lineup. There's no Christian Yelich. There's no D Gordon. There's a lot of guys who used to be staples of the Miami Marlins that aren't on the team anymore. So I can't look at what Nola did against those hitters and think it has any sort of bearing on what he's going to do against Starling Marte or Jazz Chisholm.
All right, so let's look now as far as who else you're getting to for the most part, if it's somebody in the middle or maybe if there's a punt that you were looking at to take advantage of as your number two tonight.
So I'm paying up for a lot of pitching, and even though I have a lot of the seemingly more expensive offenses, I've rostered a bunch of players from the end of the lineup. So even before, when I was talking about the Houston Astros, for example, if I pull up Houston and I look at some of the players I have the most exposure to, while I'm overweight to guys like Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve, and Yordan Alvarez, they aren't my most exposed Houston players. The guys I'm really getting the most of, it's Robel Garcia, it's Kyle Tucker, it is Michael Brantley, Miles Straw. These guys are all relatively cheap. So with that in mind, I'm still able to pay up for pitching, even though I'm getting some of the better offenses on the slate. I'm just not rostering some of the best hitters from those offenses. It's just a lot of hitters that I think are in really favorable spots and should do well regardless. So some of the other pitchers right now that I am getting to at a pretty high clip, I'm getting to Joe Musgrove a lot. I'm overweight to the field on Shohei Ohtani. I'm overweight to the field on Luis Garcia. I'm overweight to the field on Dylan Cease. And that's where a lot of my pitching exposure is. The only cheap guy I'm really getting to at a decent clip is Bailey Ober. And he's somebody who I've really gone back and forth with and struggled because I think Bailey Ober is a really good prospect. I wouldn't consider him on FanDuel because of pitch count concerns, but on DraftKings at 5,700, it's a really cheap price. And I think that Bailey Ober is a really good prospect. The problem has been he's getting handled really with kid gloves, and we haven't seen him work very deep into games. So pulling up the pitch count from Bailey Ober in recent games, he has generally pitched, around 4-ish innings. But then beyond that for Bailey Ober, the reason it's not just because he's pitching poorly or because he's been inefficient or anything like that. He's pitching really well. The team's just being really cautious, one of their top young prospects. So Bailey Ober his pitches per start, 78, 63, 73, 51. I think he's really talented, and I'm willing to roster him at 5,700 just because there's no other cheap pitching options I like. But it is something that's a little bit of a concern for me. I currently have him in about 20% of my lineups. I think I'm going to keep it there, but I just wish he was fully. I just wish he was fully unrestricted, and then I would get to him in a really significant way.
So going off of that, what's like the floor for you to get a return on your investment? Because 2 games ago in Seattle, he gets 20 fantasy points off just 63 pitches, right? So through the 4 innings that he pitched, is that enough of a, now granted, I know you want him to pitch 5-6 innings, you want him deep in the game, you want more points, but what's a reasonable return for you, Greg, to where you're not looking back and saying that wasn't the right move?
Yeah. So I don't think the question's framed the correct way, but here's why. Because it's not the same slate to slate. It's always going to be relative to the other pitching options on the slate and how they perform. So we look at the other cheap pitching options priced around Bailey Ober on DraftKings as potential SP2s that would be considered punt plays. And it is Justice Sheffield at 6,300. I don't have any interest in him because I just don't think he's any good. The last time that he scored over 10 fantasy points was June 3rd, Justice Sheffield. And before that, it was May 15th. So we're looking at a guy in Sheffield who scores double-digit fantasy points basically once every 2 or 3 weeks and is terrible in the rest of his start. So I certainly prefer Bailey Ober to Justice Sheffield. Jordan Holloway is somebody who has a lot of these same concerns that I have with Bailey Ober in terms of limited pitch count, might not work very deep into the game. He's cheap at 4,400, but with that said, I think Bailey Ober is a much better pitcher than him. And then the other cheap pitcher on DK today is Matt Harvey. And I don't think we have to relitigate how bad Matt Harvey is. Right. So with Bailey Ober, it's not so much the fact that like, hey, do I need to get X amount of fantasy points from him? It's that if the expensive hitters have big nights, I need to save salary at pitching somewhere. And Bailey Ober is the one that makes the most sense to me. So what I'm really looking at is that I prefer him to Sheffield, Holloway, and Harvey. It's not so much that I need to get like 25 fantasy points out of Ober, if that follows and makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I smell, by the way, a crossover fantasy segment here asking who's going to have more DFS points tonight, Matt Harvey or Nader, maybe on, right? Like we'd have to pick somebody that's a 1K guy in showdown mode tonight and pit him up against Harvey, right?
Listen, I'll say it's very unlikely that Abdul Nader scores negative fantasy points. And I think there's a pretty good chance that Matt Harvey scores negative fantasy points. I don't have Nader. So I don't have Nader in the Suns rotation today. I have him playing 0 minutes. I still think, more often than not, I don't think Matt Harvey scores negative fantasy points more often than not, but for the bit, and because I'm really heavy on Houston, I hope the answer is that Abdul Nader plays 0 minutes, scores 0 fantasy points, and outscores Matt Harvey.
There's nobody on the slate tonight in the NBA that Matt Harvey can outscore. if Nader, like I tried to go with the basement of floors right here. And if that's the case for Nader, then anybody up like PJ Tucker is going to quadruple his performance tonight.
Well, listen, I mean,
not Tucker. What am I saying?
No, but it's infinity more fantasy points, because if he's going to be scoring, negative fantasy points, and these guys score, like 6 or something, it's incalculable, right? The world's greatest scientists can't get together and figure out how many times more fantasy points were scored.
I don't think the bit works with somebody as bad as Harvey, although I didn't think we'd find somebody as bad as Harvey.
No, and he keeps pitching. I just wonder, like, how much longer could he realistically pitch in the big leagues?
What's he making? League minimum?
Yeah, I think he's paying for lodging. They just put him up in the hotel.
He's making 4.3. I don't know what league minimum is anymore. And all right, so he signed a 1-year contract with guarantees. Looks like it's 1 year, 1 year. Oh, jeez. So you're right. I mean, somebody is paying. Maybe it's one of these like rev share things where if he brings in a sponsor, he gets to keep some money. I don't know how he's still on a roster.
By the way, I've been digging into this. I have bad news for you. Aaron Nola, 3.13 career ERA against the Marlins. He's been fine against them. It's probably just your memory serving.
Well, the last time they came out, he only had 19. D's Dongs once again coming through with some pertinent information for the program here, Greg. He had 19 points and a loss the last time they played this year. So maybe it was recency bias. I know not to bring up trends from like previous years because it's like a major faux pas here. So I've learned through shaming by you and others on this channel not to go that far back, but it just seemed like it was something there to it. No, look, the only reason why I ask is just to try to get inside and see how you approach it, because if it's something that you don't look at as any type of key metric, then I think anybody else out there who might look at it that way would be informed. Hey, look, you've got professionals here on the channel telling you not to worry about certain stuff. Focus your time elsewhere.
Yeah, and then I think also it kind of makes sense too, where if we're just talking about, do pitchers go better or worse against individual teams, it's generally going to based on the quality of the team and not really based on any other external factors. Obviously, there could be sample size issues, but Aaron Nola for his career has a 3.52 ERA. For a very long time, the Marlins have had, one of the worst offenses in baseball. So it's not surprising to me that Aaron Nola, who's made a handful of starts against the Marlins, I'd assume he's probably made more starts, or at least around as many starts against them as any other team in the league. Like the Mets, the Braves, the teams in the division, they would be the rivaling ones in terms of total starts. But, it's not surprising. The team he's made a bunch of starts against, he has a 3.13 ERA, slightly below his career average. That all is logical to me and lines up, just given that the Marlins had a below average offense.
Well, just looking at a bunch of totals across the board here. Odd Shopper, of course, where we go for everything done for you, the work done for you. You can get the best. Even if there's one number on one book, there's going to be a better number on another book. That's why Odd Shopper exists, to help you out to make the most informed decision. And we don't have as many as you would think in the double digits, right? So I'm inclined to look at like a lower total, and that's here tonight. And knowing that Aaron Nola on the mound against the Miami team that's nearly a plus 200 road dog tonight. But based on how things have been going and looking around the weather as well, Nola can still have a good game. This Phillies bullpen is absolutely horrendous. I would think if you could get over 8 at anywhere from minus 105 to 120, that may be worth taking.
Let's see. I mean, I would just default to whatever our numbers say. By the way, if people haven't checked it out, it's really cool. I've started to write articles about a new tool we have on the site. It's a power rankings tool, and it just ranks the teams based on the projections we have for the players, creates then into that simulations for the individual games, and then predicts, a fair line for the game and see what the expected ROI is on betting on individual team sides, and then also over under. So, something like the let's see. So the Marlins
from
our data.
Okay, got it.
So and then it's also compared to the odds at Odd Shopper, finding out what the best bet is on individual teams. So which side did you say you were more interested in?
Look, I was looking at Odd Shopper, and the total may be 8.5 for a lot of people, but if I can not sacrifice, like there's one book here that I can get over 8.5 at minus 105.
All right. So the over 8.5, that is a negative
over
6.
8. Pardon me. Not
over 8. Is there juice on it?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is
Okay.
if I looked at over 8 at -110 to -120, technically 115, I think would be the range here. Then I can get over 8 at -115 or -117.
Yeah. Over 8, I mean, we have over 8.5 right now is a negative 6.3% ROI. So not something I'd really want to go to. The only bet we have right now that really stands out is the Red Sox Royals game. That has a 10.1% ROI on being under 11 runs. So that would be the one I would lean to. Something else about over-under bets is there's some rain concerns for the Red Sox Royals game. Obviously, if the game doesn't play, it's a no-go. The bet gets voided. But something that does happen sometimes in those bets is you could get a game that goes, 5 or 6 innings, and actually it depends on the book, right? Because some books, if a game goes 5 or 6 innings and then gets called, they'll void some totals bets, but some books will let it go. So I would say look at your sportsbook rules. And if it's a book that is going to be paying out bets where a game goes final through 6 innings, I think it is sensible to bet some of the unders in games that have rain concerns in the middle of the game.
Yeah, that's fair. I do wonder, though, do you ever, when you're looking at the metrics for totals in baseball, how much are you factoring in bullpens? Because I watch a team who Vince Velasquez last night was scoreless through 7. And this team can give up a run in the blink of an eye. And they're not the only one. Like, there are plenty of teams with bad bullpens, but it's almost like a counter, right, to having a star or a stud out there, an ace or a 1A out there, knowing that if you can't get 8 or 9 innings from this guy, you might be screwed. That's why first fives I would love the under for this Marlins Phillies first 5.
Yeah. So to me, I generally assume that totals are pretty efficient. I don't think that if a team has a bad bullpen, I don't assume that the odds makers that they don't know about that. I don't think I know some sort of information they don't know. It's the same thing. Like a lot of people bring up about West Coast teams coming east for football games. It's not like this has been some trend that Vegas just hasn't been able to figure out. If you look at the odds, but I think I did the research on this last year. West Coast teams going east, it's like a 500 record against the spread over the last 10 years. It's baked into the line. So same, I look at the totals. I generally think they're fair. I would fall back on our data. And if anything stands out as being a good value, I would say that would be good enough reason to bet on it. But I wouldn't just blindly assume that hey, this team has a bad bullpen, therefore it's going to shade towards the over. It's probably baked into the line already.
Well, no, it's not so much that the bullpen is the reason why it shades. That's not my motivating factor for betting it. It's something that would remove this immediate lock of, oh no, Aaron Nola's on the mound, 12 Ks. He's going to shut down Miami and pound the under. That's what I'm saying. It's a factor for me that adds more depth to the conversation as opposed to using one thing specifically to determine what I'm betting on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, for me though, I'm very data oriented.
I know. Yeah. I know. You hate me with all my narrative driven bullshit. I get it.
Yeah. With your narratives and your dumb beard. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Speaking of dumb beard. Okay. And before I tell everybody about this great opportunity that they're going to have at Monkey Knife Fight, what's going to happen first? Is it you get a haircut or me shave my beard? Because you said you haven't got a haircut in a month.
Is that a long time to not get a haircut?
Yes.
I mean, I get
not during COVID, but yes.
No, so also I get my haircut. I just buzz it all off, and then it grows back really quickly. I had no hair a month ago, 0, and then it just grows back really quick.
No hair.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just started. We haven't done that many shows together.
Yeah, but I think I'd remember a bald Ehrenberg, right?
I mean, I wasn't bald, but yeah, I had a short buzz cut. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay. So when is look, I already told you that the shave is in my future, maybe even immediate future. Will you get a haircut the next time people see you? Are you on tomorrow? Will you have a haircut by then?
No, I mean, I do. I also, the other thing is I don't have that much time to just go out and get a hair. This is my 3rd show I'm doing today. And I have a bunch of them lined up. I think I'm doing 3 tomorrow also. So it's hard for me to find time to actually do stuff during the day.
Okay. So you weren't Shander bald when you got cut down to that buzz cut. You were like military buzz cut.
Yeah, and then for me, like, it just grows back right away. So like if I was to get my haircut in like any sort of, like, I was to get a fade or whatever, it would just be like 2 days later, it's gone anyway. So that's just what's most efficient for me.
All right, see, Tyler says he let his hair grow for a year. He's got a mullet. You with the fade, and me, I'll grow out my hair, which is like not much here on the top. Like, what's going to be? He's got the mullet working. I mean, my goodness, here we are follically challenged all around, and different means to the same end. You know that, right?
Hey, also, I mean, listen, like D's dog is saying, can you imagine if I had your beard? I couldn't if I tried, right? I'm not manly enough to do something like you could do with your beard. It's not within my skill set.
Okay, well, look, I your skill set, I don't necessarily think that's a skill. That's like the kid in 8th grade who could grow the connector, right? Everybody else just had the top part of the mustache and the chin.
He was talented. It's talents I don't possess them.
All right, tonight's show, at least so far as we know, we're not sure if they pulled the plug on it yet. Brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. Now, look, there's some awesome opportunities, all player props, base contest, easy. They don't require time commitment. So if you're like Greg, you're working 3 shows a day, you can pop on a Monkey Knife Fight, take full advantage of everything that they have where you here are in charge. NBA, UFC, PGA, another tournament, the Rocket Mortgage tomorrow, esports, soccer, everything. MKF has it. To get started, head over there, monkeyknifefight.com. Choose which game you want to play, the type of contest. As you know, you're buying, and on top of all of that, we'll give you $100 when you sign up with promo code Awesemo to use to match with whatever you have. You want to drop $100 of your own to Monkey Knife Fight, we're going to match it. Use a promo code Awesemo there for that. All right, monkeyknifefight.com. And all right, is there anybody else that we have to mention because I feel like you nailed your top 2 guys you're getting exposure to. You looked at an alternative or 2 on FanDuel. We hit right down there as far as Ober is concerned. Is there anybody else we can sneak in? If not, then let's just move to stacks.
Yeah, we can move to stacks. I think that we've hit on everybody that really matters to me. Overweight to Ohtani, about even with the field on Nola. I have a pretty tight pitcher pool today. The only guys that I'm really getting significant exposure to, it's Nola, Ohtani, Musgrove, Cease, Ober, Luis Garcia. That's it for me.
All right, let's look at Houston, right? That's where we should start for you with stacks tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know that I have that much to add versus what we've talked about, though. But I mean, I'll bring it back up because it was at the top of the show that I mentioned, and we talked about the intro here. So, they're going up against Matt Harvey, and Matt Harvey does not belong at the big league level anymore. And despite that, Houston is not picking up all that much ownership. We have from the hitters, the most rostered hitter on the entire team right now is Kyle Tucker at 18%. Other than that, this is a team that, at least on DraftKings, is going way too low owned. On FanDuel, the ownership is a bit more appropriate. But even with that said, for my personal taste, like, I just think that I don't even think the data could encapsulate how bad Matt Harvey is, because usually there's variance in pitchers, right? Where there's, so even if a guy's bad, they're going to have good starts on occasion. That just doesn't even happen for Matt Harvey. He just gets lit up every single time he starts. And I kind of think he defies the data in that way. So, on FanDuel, we have Houston project for 7.9% ownership as a team. It's a number I want to be overweight to. Similar type thing on DraftKings. So I'm going to be loading up on Matt Harvey, at least per our numbers right now. It looks like the field is not there in nearly a big enough way, in my opinion.
All right. So, and you mentioned as far as when we get to some one-offs and some individual guys that you may be looking at from a cheaper standpoint, is there a pivot for you that you really do like? And, if you just look at our top stack tools, San Diego, Toronto, Boston are the 3 that are ahead of your Houston Astros. So is there, and again, maybe just looking at Boston, for example, that is super low owned, where even the Astros come in at about a 9% clip there for ownership share, below, mind you, the Angels and the 2 that I mentioned, San Diego and Toronto. Can you get to, with weather concerns and everything else kind of hovering, can you get to Boston, for example, as a pivot, knowing that at least there's going to be low ownership?
Yeah, so for me personally right now, I do not have the Royals-Red Sox game in my player pool. I don't think that game is going to play. It's starting in a rain delay. That game is not going to be starting on time, and the weather looks like it's going to be pretty poor for the entire night. So let me bring up the most recent weather report in Boston. So we have rain of about 30% for the entire night. But given the fact that it's already starting in a rain delay and it looks like it's going to have about the same chance of rain for the entire day, I think it's probably more likely to not play than play. I'm curious to certainly look online at any sort of updated weather reports, but just given the fact that it's starting in a rain delay, my feeling right now is that the game pretty high risk, good chance it doesn't play. And I just think there's better spots to target where it's something that I don't really want to chance.
All right, let's target somewhere else then. What's a better spot, in your opinion, for a pivot for Houston to target tonight, just as far as a stack?
Yeah, so I think that both sides, both the Yankees and Shohei Ohtani are going under-owned. So Shohei Ohtani, we talked about on FanDuel, he's only picking up 2% ownership. On DraftKings, 17% ownership. So Ohtani, somebody I want to be overweight to field on. But at the same time, the Yankees as a stack are only picking up 2% ownership. And Ohtani, I think we all know about his talent right now. He's somebody who, depending what sportsbook you look at, either him or Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they're the two front runners from the American League MVP. At this point in time, it's pretty hard to imagine anybody else is going to get into the mix. Ohtani at the plate has, absolutely been crushing it lately, unfortunately, because of the way that scoring is currently set up on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's only available as a pitcher and not a hitter. And his pitching stats for the year, they're certainly really good. 2.58 ERA, 3.65 expected ERA, 3.52 FIP. But with that said, he's way overperforming his peripheral stats. He gives up a lot of hard contact. And when he does get hit hard, he's a 15.8% home run to fly ball rate. So, a lot of the balls hit in the air against Ohtani ultimately end up leaving the park. And then the other thing I have to consider with Ohtani's numbers is if you look at his recent starts, incredibly easy strength of schedule. And I don't think that's being factored in enough when we talk about the quality of Ohtani as a pitcher. His last time out was against the Giants. They've been a pretty solid offense this year, so no issue there. But starts before then, the Tigers, the Diamondbacks, the Mariners. And then you go back to earlier in the season, he's pitched against the Rangers twice. He's pitched against the Indians. So there's been a lot of really easy matchups for Ohtani. And I just think that there's a chance he's going to regress going forward. I'm going to be overweight to the field on both the Yankees and Ohtani. I think it's a good spot to play both sides of.
All right. Now, I don't want to sound like totally homerish here, but I am curious, Jordan Holloway getting that replacement start tonight and just looking at the Phillies as an opportunity to victimize Holloway. Not that he's a terrible pitcher by any means, but do you have any interest in taking advantage of a circumstance like that?
So the issue I have with the Phillies is, number one, I think that Holloway is probably going to pitch, 4-ish innings or something like that. And I think the Marlins are going to get to their bullpen. Not that they have a lights out bullpen either, but in general, bullpen pitchers just tend to be better than starters. And the Phillies are really, really popular today. We currently have them with a 10% ownership share on DraftKings. So on DraftKings, the Phillies are the fourth most popular offense on the slate. On FanDuel, the Phillies are the third most popular offense on the slate, 10.6% ownership. And relative to their leverage score, this is a team that looks like they're going wildly overowned. On FanDuel and DraftKings, we have them about a 5% chance to be the top stack, while they're picking up an ownership share right around 10%. So I don't think it's a bad spot for the Phillies, but it's just the field is there way heavier than is indicative of their odds of being the top scoring team.
Real quick, hypothetical, swap their ownership with Atlanta. You've got the same scenario for Philadelphia, but it's at about 3.84% ownership. Does that change your opinion on running them tonight?
Yeah, of course, because then they would be underowned in that situation. The problem
is
that
the main metric.
Yeah, for me, it's just always which teams I want to stack. I want to be heaviest on the teams that I think have a better chance of scoring the most amount of runs on the slate relative to what their ownership is. I always want teams and players that are going to outperform their ownership. Same goes with pitchers, right? If Aaron Nola, I think he's the best pitcher on the slate. I think you think he's the best pitcher on the slate. And even if you weren't a Phillies fan, you probably think he was the best pitcher on the slate. But there's still a break-even point. So Aaron Nola, I'm comfortable with him in about half my lineups. That's about even with the field. If Aaron Nola was in 90% of the field's lineups, it's still the same spot for him, right? We still expect the same amount of fantasy points, but he becomes a much weaker play when I don't think if I was to think he's not 90% likely to be the top pitcher. So everything is relative to ownership for a really high variance sport like baseball, because it's really hard to predict the outcomes. We don't know how the game's going to go. And it's a lot different than something like basketball, where somebody starts at point guard and is $3,000 minimum price, and is going to play 30 minutes, he's going to hit value almost every time in that spot. There's nothing like that in baseball. And the high degree of variance and the unpredictability of it, it's all about odds and what odds we give players of under or underperforming what their ownership is. So there's a whole lot of variables in there, but more so than anything, I'm not trying to predict how many fantasy points individual players are going to score. It's just who I think is, over or under owned based on our numbers on the site.
It's a home game tonight against a Mets team that doesn't have DeGrom on the mound. Any interest in maybe a Brave stack? Again, pretty low owned across the board. So I don't know if there's any maneuverability there, Greg.
Yeah, I'm overweight to the Braves. So David Peterson's been a kind of interesting pitcher this year because he's had some days where he's had fantasy appeal because when he pitches well, he's a fairly high strikeout guy. But at the same time, too, he's not good. So he's always at a cheap price. So David Peterson's been, a really highly variant pitching option because he has a 4.95 ERA, a 5.27 expected ERA. However, he strikes out a quarter of the hitters he faces. So, if you ever get to a situation where Peterson makes it through 6 innings and only gives up 2 runs or something like that, he's probably striking out 6 or 7 hitters. And given that his price is so cheap, that's the type of spot where every once in a while he'll spark some upside. But with that said, he's not somebody I ended up getting to really at all today. But the Braves stack is one that I'm slightly overweight to the field just because when Peterson doesn't go well, he generally tends to get hit really hard and is also somebody who can give up a lot of runs in bunches. So he's pitched well his last 3 times out, but he kind of struggled a little bit before then. So starts against the Phillies, Nationals, and Cubs recently, those all went well. But then, you only have to look at the starts before that where he pitched against Baltimore, not a good offense, gave up 4 runs in 2 innings. Then the start before that against the Cardinals, also not a good offense. He gave up 5 runs and only was able to record 1 out. So somebody's all over the map, a lot of variance there. And I don't mind a low-owned Braves offense for that reason.
What about kind of the opposite end here? Start to look at some individual one-offs real quick, Greg, but I'm just curious on the way out from the stack convo, and we talked about Boston, for example, in the rain delay, so that aside, but is there a popular or maybe super owned stack that you're not only underweight to, but you're so far away from that you just know that stack ain't it tonight?
We talked about the Phillies. That's a team that's very negatively leveraged. Also, this is going to be different site to site. So on FanDuel, we have the Padres projected for over 20% ownership as a team. And for a slate of this size, that is a lot of ownership going to one team. Not that I would call the Padres an outright fade, but I think rostering the Padres in more than 20% of your lineups is too much. So I think the Padres are over-owned on FanDuel. According to our top stacks tool, negative 7.7% leverage score. That makes them the most over-owned team by a pretty wide margin on FanDuel. On DK, we have the Phillies are going pretty wildly over-owned by a pretty wide margin. The other one, too, is the Los Angeles Angels. So here's the issue I have with the Angels. The matchup against Domingo Germán, it's not bad. It's decent enough. However, Shohei Ohtani isn't available as a hitter. So let's say the Angels go out and they score 6 or 7 runs. You don't get access to the best hitter in their lineup, a guy who's probably going to be responsible for a lot of that offense. He's going to be involved in the run scoring. He's going to be involved in driving the runs in, might hit a homer or 2 based on what we've seen from him over the last few weeks. So the fact that we have the Angels picking up 10% ownership as a team, I like some of these hitters as one-offs, but it's hard for me to make 5-man stacks of them on any of the slates where Ohtani pitches where we just don't get access to him as a DFS play.
All right, let's look at the final 10 minutes or so. And remember, we have a Live Before Lock NBA edition coming your way at the top of this hour. Take advantage of everything you heard. Greg mentioned the top stack tools, the top MLB pitchers available. That's free. Normally premium. That's free for you tonight. Take advantage of everything here. The Awesemo Plus pass is really just $29.95 a week. And as baseball is going to be front and center with the NBA kind of waning off, golf, everything else you want to take advantage of, UFC, it's all here. So why not $29.95 a week? Join the Awesemo Plus community. And if you want to bump it up, which we always suggest you do, to Awesemo Plus Platinum, bam, right there. MLB Live Before Lock, all caps, all one word. It's the name of this show. And you put that in checkout, 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And from MLB DFS, we have that as well. Awesemo Plus MLB, $15.95, but really everything at $29.95 is super affordable, and you'll be making money in no time. All right, to quote one of our favorite out there, Greg Ehrenberg, cut the crap. Who's the best one-off on the slate?
Let's see.
And if you want to start with catchers, maybe because it's a little easier, and then we can go into everybody else because of where a catcher may fall into your stack versus paying up for somebody where you may want to stay away from that.
Let's see. What individual hitter do I have the most exposure to? That's just going to be my answers. Whatever individual hitter I have the most of on DraftKings right now. As a one-off, Fernando Tatis. That's a really strong play on DraftKings. I have a bunch of exposure to him. So the two guys that I have the most of right now, Fernando Tatis and Kyle Tucker. So Kyle Tucker, actually a lot of these guys, if you single out my top 10 most rostered hitters on DraftKings, most of them are going to be Houston Astros just because of how high I am on them as a stack against Matt Harvey. But yeah, if you're paying up for a hitter, Fernando Tatis. If you're going in the mid-range, Kyle Tucker. As a value play, Robo Garcia, also another Houston Astros guy. A lot of Astros for me.
What about, and just sticking with this spot, because he's popping up all over crunching lineups on DraftKings because of a value. It's Kurt Suzuki at your catcher spot tonight, 2K on DraftKings. Any interest in that as far as a value play?
I don't really like the Angels as a stack, a 5-man stack, because we don't get access to Shohei Ohtani, like I said before. Yep. But as an individual one-off hitter, number one, first of all, catcher is a really difficult position generally to get a lot of production out of. So it's a spot that I never mind punting. So the two catchers that I have the most exposure to are Kurt Suzuki, just based on the price. He's 2,000, and he's not a bad hitter either. So the flat min for Kurt Suzuki, that's always favorable. And then Jason Castro, also cheap, and he just fits into my Astro stacks.
Infield, like across the board here, are you underweight like you are with Houston overweight like you were with Houston to certain individuals here across the board? If you want to take it to the outfield, that's fine. I was just kind of separated here from the infield and the outfield. But are you looking at individuals same way that you were approaching it with Houston, where you're getting ahead of the field?
Robo Garcia, also because he's on Houston. At third base, I don't think Anthony Rendon is a bad one-off. So once again,
up a bunch.
Yeah, once again, just cheap Angels hitter. Anthony Rendon also only 4,200 on DraftKings, and he struggled a little bit earlier in June and through the mid part of June. That's one of the reasons his price point plummeted so much. But it looks like he's been a little bit more successful at the plate over the last week. So his fantasy points totals from the last 5 games. 14 fantasy points, 9, 4, 13, and 10. And we're getting Anthony Rendon at a price point that, we never really see him this cheap. So this looks like a good buy low spot for him. He's my most exposed third baseman. And then Robo Garcia, the second baseman, I'm getting the most exposure to. By the way, also, we have a super chat from Soldo. So Soldo asked for FanDuel, Brantley and Lourdes Gurriel, or Carlos Correa and Will Myers. That is Correa and Will Myers for me.
Okay. Correa, Will Myers, FanDuel. Gotcha. Looking at, I was just seeing if there was anybody else to squeeze in. Are you interested in plucking anybody like San Diego, for example, right? We'll stay away from Boston because of the rain issue. But, and I did see on the chat, somebody in Cincinnati saying they're not too far away from the stadium, and the clouds and the rain look like they're coming in. So who the hell knows to that extent? But can you pick off to where you're maybe not leaning towards a stack like San Diego, but pick off 1 or 2 people that make sense in your roster?
Yeah, and by the way, there is some weather concern in the Padres Reds game. It's not something that I've taken them out of my player pool for now. We still have 15 minutes until that game starts. So let's see if I could look online really quick and see the weather map or what the chances of rain. Maybe Alex has posted something about it in the YouTube chat here. El Negro Loco saying that Cincy should be fine. That was my read on it earlier also, is that I thought there was a little bit of risk there, but it wasn't anything that was going to prevent me from playing it. So yeah, I still have it in my player pool. I'm more concerned right now about the Red Sox game, the Cincinnati game, just because the Red Sox game has already started in a rain delay.
All right, so let's move to the outfield. And I did see something really quick just to bring it back to Matt Harvey because everything is about bashing Matt Harvey. You know, Bobby Bonilla is set to make more money tomorrow than Matt Harvey is this year pitching.
Hey, Bobby Bonilla, he got the lifetime deal from the Mets. And what was
1.2 million.
And then what was Bobby Bonilla though? Also, he had a good career though. Not as much with the Mets later on in the later portion of his career, but he's a guy for his career. I'm looking at his numbers right now: 123 WRC plus. He was a guy who was like a 3 to 4.5 win player. So Bobby Bonilla was solid. And listen, relative to today's numbers, if he was putting up this kind of wins above replacement value, he'd be worth way more money. Unfortunately, he doesn't produce very many wins these years.
No, although I think he produces more wins this year than Matt Harvey, right?
Yeah, I mean, Matt Harvey's producing negative wins, which is also, by the way, the tail end of Bobby Bonilla's career was not great from a wins above replacement perspective. So 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001.
He's mid-30s, Greg. Come on. He doesn't get a break for that?
No, not at all. He was worth about negative 3.5 wins over the course of those 4 seasons, was below replacement level in all those years. So, you get to a point where it's just, play anybody else.
Fair enough. All right, let's look at it as we wind out here. Give me one outfielder. And before you give us a home run pick or two, and how about Ohtani, huh? Give us one outfielder that you have the most exposure to across the board.
Well, it's Kyle Tucker. I mentioned him before also. But next one is Michael Brantley for me, another Houston Astro. If you want to go cheap, Miles Straw, another Houston Astro who's very cheap on FanDuel and DraftKings and is projected for 2% ownership.
EMAC checking in, of course. Bobby Bonilla Day. It's a national holiday, or it should be. You could take off work tomorrow. I just tell your boss, go check online. All right, you can't pick Ohtani tonight, although I know you really wanted to. Who's your home run pick?
Let's see. Well, first, let me go to. By the way, it is really hard to find value on player props for home runs. They're just they're props that are just juiced so heavily. But I am curious to see if there's any individual prop that has positive ROI. So looks like Yuli Gurriel.
Fletcher.
No David Fletcher today, but Yuli Gurriel going up against Matt Harvey. There is a book that has him with a plus 780. So about 8-1 odds for Yuli Gurriel to hit a home run. That would be the best home run bet of the day. As for hitter that I'm going to pick to hit a home run, I'm going to go with Yordan Alvarez, who on the Astros going up against Matt Harvey. And I think he's pretty likely to hit a home run. One of the best power hitters in baseball. And Matt Harvey is not good, as we have mentioned a few times. So that'll be my official home run pick for the day, Yordan Alvarez.
Yeah, wow, Gurriel. I see that 2 books, plus 780. That's not bad. A little half unit on that. Awesome. All right, brother. When are you back on for your 3-4 show bonanza?
Let's see. So I'm done for today. But tomorrow I will be doing the early MLB show, and then I'll be doing the show that'll be for social media, just like a pick show, and then I'll be doing NBA Live Before Lock tomorrow night.
Following me in Gundagger. Okay.
Yes.
And you will not have a haircut.
Most likely not. It does not appear my schedule will allow for that.
I'm gonna have to shave just to show you up.
Hey, listen, if that's your idea of showing me up, go for it.
Well, it certainly isn't going to win a bet or pick the Suns preseason to win and cash some large change. I can tell you that.
Hey, listen, whatever small wins you get in life, maybe it could win you favor with your wife. And, what's more important than that?
That's more important. I hate to do it to you, Greg, but unfortunately, that's a little bit more important than winning favor over with you. You understand, right?
Hey, listen, it's totally cool with me.
All right, brother. Have a great night. Tyler, thank you, sir. As always, make sure you are continuing to follow NBA Live Before Lock. Comes your way right now. Have a great night.